In a wolverish swamp, a brutal battle explodes. Knights in formation crash headfirst into monstrous, insect-like horrors, and steel swords and spears slash as their blades collide with savage, clawed chins in a desperate fight. In the middle of the chaos, a squad leader screams for reinforcements to back up the other leaders on the field. Then a young, dark-haired knight, standing out of the fight, calmly says it won't be needed. That declaration snaps the attention of a female first officer. She whips around at him, shocked, demanding answers and calling out his rank. He doesn't blink. He just stares at the massive insectoid beast, hand gripping the sword's hilt, and declares, cold and certain, that it's his prey. He spends another night on watch until a young guy with light, spiky hair explodes into action, cutting a monster clean in half like it's effortless, and the crowd goes wild. This is the legendary sword of Alta Schweitz, the kingdom's youngest knight. Night hits and it rips open a memory. Dark-haired Knight stares into the darkness and remembers the life he had before reincarnation. In that world, he was Raoul Isouth, a man who gave everything to the sword path. That lonely life, empty of family and friends, was the road he trudged alone, doomed to fade quietly without anyone to stop it. Years have crawled by since that death, then he was reborn in this world as Alta. To see what he could truly become, he strapped on the life of a mercenary, stormed through wars, and cut down every enemy in his path until he finally seized the title of Sword Saint, a blade master no one could match. Now because that crazy amount of magical power he was born with never really ran out, Alta's skills are almost back to their prime. After getting his second chance at life, he sets one clear mission: stack enough money to build a comfortable retirement. And he's working right now for the Sirius Black Knights Order in the Galdia Kingdom, the very land he was reborn in. She faced Commander Lemire Owen, who lounged in his seat with his feet kicked up on the desk, and told him, mission accomplished, the abnormally reproduced demonic beast was wiped out. Sure, the squad took injuries, but not a single life was lost, and she finished with a smirk, praising his brilliant work. He eagerly asked if he'd get a bonus for every kill, and then spilled that he'd racked up 1,259. With his priorities laid bare, he straightened up, stood right in front of her office doors, and delivered a heartfelt thank you. Her curiosity hit max speed, and Lemire clocked that money was the second thing he brought up, so she leaned in and pressed him, demanding to know what he was planning to use it for. He shrugged it off like it was no big deal, saying it was nothing special, just something he was quietly saving for, because whatever came next was going to need it. His half-hearted answer set her off, so she shot forward, yanked his uniform, and demanded to know why a kid like him wasn't chasing dreams or passion. Then she kept pressing, asking what made his heart spark. Shocked out of his mind, he could only blurt that there was nothing special about it. He jerked back and seriousness slammed into his face, because in his head he realized sword in hand didn't spark some hunger for power. It was the same numb, worn-out burnout he'd carried from his old life, a truth so personal he'd never dared tell a single soul. He shoved those heavy thoughts to the side, and his face lit up with a big, bright grin, declaring, I'm still young, so I'll take it slow and handle things my way. His carefree attitude ripped a hearty laugh out of the commander, and she straight up told him she liked that about him. Standing there, he thought she might be a troublesome superior, but at least he could actually talk to her. Then her eyes lit up, and she pointed at him, saying she'd just had an idea. With a jolt of inspiration, she hacked the document in half across the desk, then announced, bold as ever, that First Officer Alta had the perfect mission lined up for someone like him. He snatched up the papers, scanned them fast, and straight up asked if his next assignment was a bodyguard job. He snatched the sketch his commander shoved his way. There was a refined young woman staring back at him, and Lemire's voice cut in. A nasty rumor was spreading, and until her safety could be confirmed, he'd be her escort. When he heard the mission paid double, he snapped out, let's do it. But Lemire cut in with a warning. Hiring a first officer on just a rumor meant this job was going to be brutal. He weighed the offer of double pay for what looked like a walk in the park, until his commander pointed out how easy he was to read, then casually said she'd already dealt with the current guards, and it was time to move on. He snapped back, Roger, and kept it together inside. His assignment yanked him straight to Fiorum Academy's higher education department, a massive, sprawling school sealed behind towering stone walls. Inside the academy grounds, the morning buzz felt almost peaceful, until one young man suddenly started yelling at everyone to clear the path. The crowd tore open a path for Iris Reinful. Everyone knew she was the Reinful family's only daughter, one of the kingdom's 4 great noble houses, and the one girl who held the terrifying title, Sword Saint Princess. As she strolled by with her companion, 2 students lingered at a distance, totally hooked. One couldn't stop gushing over Iris' beauty, while the other bragged that just being her classmate was something to flex, even if they'd never so much as talked. Later, inside the lecture hall, their whispers turned into a wild debate about her future, and one of the girls dropped a bombshell. her father said Irisama was the frontrunner to become the next king. Her friend snapped in shock, staring like, wait, the next monarch is 15, the same age as us. She lingers by the window, face heavy with sorrow, staring into the dark truth of what it really means to be born with everything. Iris's thoughts get cut off the moment she spots her friend, Arya Natria, slumped asleep on a desk, so she leans in, gently wakes her, and tells her just how grateful she is for helping with her morning practice. Arya, eyes open at last, gently pats Iris on the head and blurts out how adorable she thinks she is. Then Iris smiles back after thanking her, and the princess can't help but break into a little pleased smile. The talk drifts to that recent swordsmanship exam, and Arya practically latches onto it as a perfect break. She even offers to team up with Iris anytime for practice, but Iris just keeps it quiet and firm, insisting she still needs more training. As the school bell rings, her resolve locks in tight. She quietly swears she'll keep training until she becomes a swordswoman no one can ever beat. Right in the middle of the classroom buzz, everything snaps shut when a new figure strolls in, a young boy in a formal robe standing at the front and demanding, "Take your seats." The students' murmur dies in their throat as confusion spikes. "Who is this kid?" He scans the whole class, then straight up introduces himself. Today, he's their new homeroom teacher and the temporary kenjutsu instructor, and he makes it official when he says his name, Alta Schweitz. The declaration slams into the classroom like a thunderclap, and Iris freezes, eyes wide, as the whole class erupts in disbelief, while sensei echoes through their shocked silence. She gapes at the boy in pure disbelief, refusing to believe he's really supposed to teach swordsmanship. Stomping her foot, she demands to know how he dares to call himself a kenjutsu instructor. Alta tries to calm things down, saying the headmaster himself signed off, but that only fans the flames of her outrage. Her classmates burst into agreement, and Arya Natria couldn't believe it. How does a homeroom teacher get swapped out midterm? Then another student fired back, reminding everyone what Iris is really like. She crushed the national kenjutsu tournament at just 10 years old, still hasn't lost a single match, and that's why she's crowned the Sword Saint Princess. He hears their protests without flinching, then turns to the whole class and proposes a mock battle, plus a grin so confident it's scary, because he swears that if he loses, he'll walk out of the classroom for good. The challenge yanks everyone onto the martial arts field, and Iris frets over this mock battle offer, until a spiky-haired male student surges forward and takes the challenge for her, declaring he's got Alta covered and Iris doesn't need to lift a finger. The student pulls Alta aside and grills him about his weapons, even demanding if he knows what a mocksword is. Then Alta lays it out. Those magic sword blades don't slice or bleed, but the moment they land, they hit like pure pain. Then he lays down the challenge. If Alta can tag him with just one clean hit before class ends, he'll hand over the win. Alta just nods, steps to the side, and picks a fake sword from the rack like this is no big deal. Fresh instructor steps forward, ready for war, and whips around to face the whole class, then shuts down the idea of single combat, saying taking them one by one is a nightmare. Instead, he throws out a wild new dare. All of them at once attack him now. The moment he speaks, everything detonates. Students get launched in an instant, their practice swords clattering to the ground. Alta doesn't even flinch. She stands there unscathed and calmly says, "It's fine, go at it together." The sheer force of her skills overwhelms the rest, and they're left staring in disbelief, totally crushed. Defeated students reel from their sudden loss. One of them is still sprawled on the ground, staring in shock and demanding how 20 of them could have been wiped out. He even remembers someone telling them to cut him some slack. Right nearby, Arya Natria watches with furrowed concern, whispering Iris's name. As the dust settles, Alta stands there cool as ice, thinking to himself that he's way stronger than that last instructor ever was. From a nearby bench, Iris, Reinful, and Arya watch him, and Arya is the first to break the silence, flat out admitting the new instructor is seriously powerful. As her friend talks, Iris's eyes harden and she zones in on Alta alone, one chilling question pounding in her head. If Alta is this skilled, why would he dare to call for a mock battle? Fueled by that question, she snaps up from her seat, strides straight to the center of the training hall, and lets her voice slice through the murmurs as she orders everyone to back off, because she's handling this alone. Her big declaration gets slapped down with scornful laughter from the other students, and one of them sneers at her, telling her not to dream she can beat them. Then he grins and declares that from this moment on, it's the real deal. Alta whips around at the chaos, grinning at Iris and Arya, then he drops the bomb. "You're next." He points out the clock is burning down, so they'd better move fast. Iris doesn't flinch. Pure, unshakable resolve kicks in the moment she accepts the challenge. She steps forward, locks eyes with him, and Schweitz drowning in sadness. Then she starts, apologizing for underestimating him, straightens her voice with pure confidence, and declares she already saw through his technique, because his childish tricks won't work on her anymore. After she dropped that bold declaration, she and Arya spun away from him, Arya saying she'd had enough and was done. Iris nodded in with her, and the two walked off together, leaving Alta standing there by herself as the clear, undisputed winner of the mock battle. Her hesitation lasted a split second, then wham! A flash of brilliance burst forward as the sword Saint Princess swung, her fancy blade crashing into another with sparks flying everywhere. Now the showdown was locked in, near enough to feel the tension, as Iris Reenfell faced Ulta with rage-fueled determination, ready to step in and take him on head first. Before Arya could even move, she shot forward and slammed him with a lightning-fast strike, only for his blade to snap it aside with total ease, leaving a watching student stunned, like they couldn't believe the attack got blocked. That one parry detonated a furious showdown, and the air instantly filled with non-stop steel-on-steel clanging. Watching the duel, Iris felt a jolt in her chest. Alta was accelerating again, and his defense had zero gaps left. If she couldn't spot a crack, she'd have to break her own speed limits to keep up. And while that storm hit her, Alta stayed locked in, his blade flowing like it was stitched to his will. Their blades kept colliding at a blinding speed, and the poor spectator just stood there, utterly stunned, trying to figure out what even happened in that whirlwind blur. As the exchange stalled, Alta dug in and held his ground, shocked to realize a student with that kind of skill was really out there in this country, and then he snapped his gaze to the panting Iris. "So, did you finally recognize my real power?" Iris didn't give a single word back. She sucked in a sharp breath, eyes blazing open with the kind of realization that hits like lightning, and her grip crushed down on her sword. Ulta was left completely stunned by the sudden shift. She snapped back into control and led her classmates in a vicious, all-at-once onslaught, blades screaming from every angle, closing in on Alta at the heart of the chaos, where she somehow swatted away every single strike with effortless ease. His footwork turned into a blur, every step precise and effortless, as he shifted his weight to slide right into the next strike. He met her blade head-on, face totally calm, then praised her strategy for hunting his blind spot, only to admit it was a brutal challenge in such an open arena, and with a hard stare, he vowed he'd seize the initiative himself. True to his promise, he burst forward, leaving everyone staring as he slammed the attack down. Then he was coming straight for her, and Iris snapped, urging Arya to pull back. The duel hit a fever pitch, steel flashed everywhere, when a crisp bell chime suddenly cut through the training grounds. That sudden sound sliced through the tension, yanking the fight to a brutal stop. Each of the three fighters froze, and Alta lifted her head, faintly stunned, because she recognized the signal that the round was over. She stood frozen in place, sweat pouring down her brow as the brutal gap between their skills hit her like a truck, and she just stared, wide-eyed, breathless, completely overwhelmed. He spoke to them in strict formality, and then, like he was keeping a vow out loud, announced that he'd finally take over as their homeroom teacher and also handle kenjutsu on a temporary basis. He swept the room and demanded, any questions, any objections, and that snapped the silence. Iris stared him down and hit him with the last question anyone expected, how old he was. The shock hits hard when Altid grins and happily announces he's turning 12 this year. Then he slides right into the students' care and begs them not to judge him by that kid-faced look. Iris is left reeling, thinking there's no way someone that young belongs teaching advanced students. He should be stuck in basic education. He reels through the mission in his head, muttering that his baby-faced look is the dumbest snag for slipping in as an instructor the moment they roll out his cover story. And now that the infiltration's supposedly done, he can't stop wondering whether his commander is really buying the situation he's setting up. Later on, Commander Lemher Owen breaks it all down for Alta, explaining that Iris was originally in the running for the Order of the Knights, and he'd planned to give her a bodyguard. But Alta reveals Lemher had been right to expect trouble, because Iris shut that idea down instantly, bragging that she was strong enough and didn't need protection. And when Lemher hears it, he nods, confirming the sword Saint Princess really is just that strong. He admits that based on what Iris has already shown, she's mostly right about her own skills. Then he adds that in his old world, at just 30 years old, people started calling him something like a sword saint. His thoughts snap into focus. Sure, Iris is good, but she's not a full-on sword saint yet. Just as his mind settles, Commander Lemher barges in and cuts his reverie short, telling them to get settled and that he's got to be taken to the first aid room. Later on, as he walks with Iris, her friend Arya yells out, asking if she's okay, and Alta can't help but think, he never once imagined the title Sword Saint would come from someone like Iris. He faces Iris and admits she's right. He still hasn't landed a single sword strike on her, and then, under his breath, he wonders if she rushed ahead of him on purpose. Her face tightens with iron resolve. She didn't lose, not for a second. She keeps whispering that to herself, raging with certainty. There's just no way she could have lost. She stood there frozen in stunned silence, letting the weight of her loss finally crush down on her, like the first time she'd felt this huge gap in power since everyone started calling her the Sword Saint. Her sword, she realized, didn't even feel like it had truly connected with. Her eyes narrowed and pure resolve sparked like lightning, because neither of them had gone all out yet, and this wasn't finished. As Alta spun to leave, a young boy's voice sliced through the quiet street, yelling, "S.H. White-sensei." Right there, the kid blurted whether Alta had pulled some magic, and what would happen if he finally snapped back and fought. He snapped his focus to the girl standing there, completely thrown off. Then she cut straight through his confusion and spoke to him with pure intensity. "Find me seriously, please." And just like that, the very first meeting between the boy and the one called the Sword Sinker was underway. With Iris Reinfeld glaring at the young instructor, her face set like stone, she presses him hard and demands to know, does he really plan to fight her for real? He doesn't answer with words. He bursts out with a carefree laugh, shutting his eyes as they crinkle, and then he goes, "So what happened to you?" insisting full-on that he was fighting for real just a second ago. She starts to protest, but he's already turned away and motions at a massive set of doors, snapping that they're going to be late for their next class and pushing her to move, while the other students stare, totally baffled. After that mock battle, while he strides through the academy's stone corridor, a voice suddenly cuts through, calling him Alta Sensei. He snaps his head around and sees another instructor in a cloak closing in on him. The man introduces himself as OTZ Coldstar, the head of the school year, and then, right in front of everyone, he praises Iris Reinfeld's terrifying talent, saying her last Kenjutsu instructor was so completely outmatched he could only mourn that he'd never be able to teach her anything else. He keeps going. Turns out the principal told him the new teacher is secretly a knight on an undercover mission. Alta grins and blurts, "OTZ," at the top of his lungs. OTZ apologizes, but Alta just waves it off, practically buzzing at the thought of being infiltrated. TZ flashes a confident wink, betting Alta will click with the students fast, and adds that whoever ends up on the throne would be lucky to have a guardian like her. Alta's face shifts, thinking hard now. He wants to believe it, but he admits he's got a question. Nervous, he might have just crushed the students' spirits. The demonstration left the female students completely spellbound, swarming around a table like it was a spectacle, and bombarding their brand new teacher with praise and nonstop questions, especially how strong he was, considering how young he looked. They pressed him for everything, where he came from, what he did in his free time, even how tall he was. And after class, they didn't just suggest it, they practically invited him to hang out with them. One girl, dead confident, even said that no matter what, he still wouldn't beat them. But the male students didn't buy it. They lingered at a distance, stewing with jealous eyes, totally missing how Alta's glares hit them, and Alta just grinned like he was making friends with the whole class. He faced the class and declared that all questions could wait until tomorrow. Though it wasn't the response he wanted, he figured this was good enough for a stopgap lecturer. Then, as he started to leave, his mind snapped to the last troublemaker he still had to deal with. Right then, Iris Reinfeld slammed into his path and blocked it cold. She stared him down with a steel-hard resolve and demanded he fight her for real, not around it, not halfway. He glanced at her and annoyance flashed across his face the moment he felt how intense she was. She pushed forward, shouting his title again and again, begging him, until he sighed and reminded her, plain as day, that he'd already said he fought seriously in their mock battle. He swallowed his shock and admitted to himself that her strength was real, the kind you'd expect from a sword saint princess. Then he just gave her a calm request to stop using that title out loud. She flat out ignored his request, eyes sharpening as she insisted he hadn't been fighting at full power, and then she slammed down her demand, a duel packed with enchantments. The very thing she'd pointed out was off-limits in their last match. Alta's face went tight, sweat dripped as he realized this was even worse than he'd imagined. The plea shot into a frenzy the moment she yanked his arm, begged for help with her work, and promised she'd do anything in return, yet he jerked back, jaw tightening as frustration took over. He wanted zero drama, and he couldn't fathom why this sore loser was so hell-bent on turning him into her enemy. He froze when he realized how serious Iris's offer really was, because "I'll do anything" is never a good sign, especially for the person hearing it. To see if she'd fold, he threw out a nasty hypothetical. "What would you do if I asked you to do something unpleasant?" The question hit Iris like a punch, leaving her totally stunned. He felt sure she finally got what his words meant, so he told her everything would be okay, until Iris's fingers clenched her skirt, her posture going rock solid and unshakable. Her face burned a deep red as she shook, panic and thoughts crashing through her mind. Then she clenched her will and decided, if her teacher really wanted this, she'd follow through no matter what. A sudden courage in her snapped the air, leaving him staring like he'd just seen a ghost. He couldn't believe she was actually serious. A tense silence slammed between them as her flustered face betrayed her nerves, while he just stared on. She tapped her on the head with a folded fan, snapping her back into reality, because, as he said, that wasn't resolution, it was pure desperation. His blunt words hit Iris like a punch. She went red, tongue-tied, and couldn't get a sentence out. He apologized for snapping at her, then admitted her mess felt brutal, and he honestly couldn't spot a clean way to fix it. Seeing Iris's raw, unshakable desperation, he finally caved, then threw down his terms. If she truly was willing to go that far, he'd tack on one condition to their duel. The second he said it, hope ignited in Iris's eyes, and she agreed without hesitation. He threw down his rules and pointed at a far-off clock tower. She'd have 30 minutes, and if she caught him in time, he'd fight her for real. If not, she'd have to walk away. Iris swallowed hard, then nodded with a gut-level determination and accepted the challenge. She stood there, mouth agape, as he laid out his terms, then launched himself straight out the second-story window. He dropped nimbly onto the railing below, whipped around to grin at her, and declared he'd be sprinting across the school grounds. Sure, it sounded childish, but he wasn't about to let her win. Before she even had time to process his words, he erupted into motion and shot down the walkway, blasting past everyone in a blur and leaving the other students staring in shock. He hurled himself through the air and flooded his body with magic, knowing that even in this kid's form, he could pull off feats no ordinary adult could touch. This was the real power of a former sword saint. Hot on his heels, Iris clenched her teeth and sprinted after him, refusing to let him slip away, because whoever she was chasing was clearly skilled, and now it was her turn to go all in. The chase yanked her into the campus woods until he vanished from her sight, and she hissed that he was acting like a brat, then snapped back into gear fast, because the clock still had time left, and she just had to figure out how to grab him. Just as she was weighing her next move, a tiny object tore out of the trees and slammed right into her shoulder. The projectile wasn't from her teacher. Out of the forest shadows, two figures burst into view, a hulking, menacing brute in dark glasses, flanked by twin curved blades, who smirked at the sword saint princess and gloated that she was finally all alone. Even as she can barely move, she snaps her eyes up and spots the assassins attacking her right away. The hooded one laughs, calls the poison now flooding her veins a perfect weapon, and while a surge of power crackles from her clenched fist, that venom pins her down fast and won't let go. The poison yanks her down to her knees, her body flat out refusing her commands, and that huge sunglasses creep cackles like a villain, savoring her helplessness. Then he taunts, asking how she's supposed to fight when she can't even lift an arm. A cold shiver slams through her the moment her eyes fly open, and pure defiance sparks inside her even as fear starts creeping in. She jolts with dawning horror. She's really about to get killed, and the sheer panic of it feels pathetic, even though she'd prepared for the possibility. From up in the branches, a calm voice murmurs, "Oh," and a tiny cloaked figure peers down at everything below. Right then, another figure crashes into the clearing, Arya Natria, classmate in tow, magic blazing as she cups energy in her hand, and she shouts with pure conviction that Iris isn't dying here. Her arrival just makes the big assassin grin harder. He laughs, leans in, and taunts the sword saint princess like she's nothing but a spoiled, ragged princess with a famous name. Alta, the cloaked instructor, steps in and addresses Iris and Arya, saying this enemy is his fight, and they need to back off now. He tells Iris the sight could rattle a student, so she should shut her eyes. Iris stares up at him in shock because she recognizes him, and when he stays calm, he just confirms it, "Yeah, sensei." He stood toe-to-toe with that giant assassin, and the monster sneered at him like he was nothing, mocking him as some empty-handed kid and laughing, sarcastically, that he was a great reinforcement. In the very next heartbeat, the assassin's taunts died instantly, his head was hacked clean off, and terror froze on his face mid-breath. The strike hit so fast that Arya just froze, staring in shock because there was no way to see it in time, while Iris lay on the ground watching. Their instructor stayed perfectly. He held his hand out like a signal, and that was where the invisible attack was coming from, while Iris, still barely standing, couldn't shake the fear that what she just saw was her teacher's real enchantment at work. Then his gaze snapped to the last hooded figure, and he calmly told him, because of them, he could sense their murderous magic. The assassin demanded why he wasn't chasing the ones who'd already bolted, and the instructor answered that he would, if it ever became necessary. He kept sizing them up and clocked them as a squad of pro-killers. The dead man was the only one who didn't bolt, so he figured more reinforcements were lurking nearby. Across the way, Commander Lemire Owen stared at the aftermath and admitted her gut was right. She'd misread it, but her target was way more skilled than she'd expected. His eyes snapped to the injured girl, Iris Rienfi Roman II, kneeling in the dirt, and he didn't sugarcoat it. Someone out there is trying to kill her. From the dark, a new figure stepped out and yanked his hood back, grinning like he'd just hit the jackpot. He couldn't stop bragging about how he'd finally get to battle the Sword Saint Princess, and right through Iris's injuries, she stared him down with iron resolve. Then the assassin scoffed, claiming she was nothing but a kid who couldn't possibly strike with power like that. He jabs a finger straight at the young boy, smug grin blazing on his face. "So this is what you've got," he says, laughing through every word, and yeah, he first shrugged it off as a pointless fight, but now he's counting his blessings. A razor-edged katana snaps free from its sheath with a loud, sharp, metallic ring. But that blade doesn't belong to the hooded assassin at all. Right in the middle of the trees, a brand new fighter steps forward, sword already drawn, and he's built like a weapon, shaved head, brutal markings across his face. He calls himself Azuma Karai, one of the King Kakushu. In a forest clearing choked with fallen bodies, Azuma Kurai stands over his grim work, while Iris Reinfel's young boy watches, wide-eyed, as Commander Lemire Owen strides forward to face the assassin, demanding his name even though she already knows. He's King Kakushu, that notorious mercenary clan that will cut down anyone, no matter who they are, if the price is right. She locks him with a cold, piercing stare, and yep, her suspicions hit dead on. He's a true Zuma Kurai of the King Kakushu. Unimpressed, she tells Azuma he's crossed into their country and orders him to stay right where he is, then snaps that her real mission starts with the boy standing behind him, and Azuma can get his shot either during or after the fight, while the assassin can somehow feel the crushing power blasting off her. He stands there locked in on the brutal standoff, face set like stone, because deep down he doesn't feel the thrill of battle the others are riding, and beside him Iris watches too, her eyes packed with worry. Azuma Kurai's grin spreads as the chaos keeps climbing, lighting something electric in his chest, and he blurts out that he wants this moment to never end. Then he admits he can't hold back anymore, while across from him Lemire stands ready to strike. Her fingers clamp the sword hilt tight, twitching like she's ready to strike, and the boy clocks that stance in a heartbeat. In a blur of motion, both warriors slam into battle at once. Lemire darts forward, her blade snapping through the air in a lightning strike, timed perfectly as she draws. Azuma mirrors her, yanking his katana free to clash head-on. Blades slam together with a thunderous roar, bursting into a blazing spray of sparks right where they collide. Commander Lemire staggers. She can't even spot the blow that just nicked her, and then it clicks. It was another sword strike she never saw coming. Across from her, assassin Azuma Karai tightens his grim expression and confirms it without mercy. His attack is the kind you don't perceive at all. From the shadows, the boy in the dark cloak clocks it instantly. He knows that move. A blade of wind cutting through the air and blasting an opponent back, a technique sharpened by the legendary sword saint, Raoul Issao. Opponent, Azuma snaps his blade up, and pure shock flashes across his face. He blurts that he never dreamed he could stand toe-to-toe with the Saint Sword's Kenjutsu, especially since he's a wind magic user himself. Then his expression shifts, respect, real respect, as he calls the boy an insanely interesting kid. He speaks and suddenly his power erupts. Right in front of him, a huge, intricate magic circle slams into existence in the air, blazing hard with the central rune for wind. Energy crackles around Azuma as he braces to unleash a devastating wind-based attack, while across from him, the boy stands his ground, blade of wind spinning around his hand, ready to clash head-on. Their powers slam together in a raging storm of invisible slashes, and the air itself looks like it's getting torn apart with every hit. Lemire just stares, stunned, because they're trading these brutal attacks without ever taking a step. Azuma's power surges again. Another higher-level magic circle snaps into place around him, etched with wind, cut, and void runes. Then a crazed, blood-splattered grin cracks across his face as he whips his katana through the air, bellowing that the duel is exactly the kind of thrill he lives for. The two fighters snap their deadlock, sprinting straight at each other across the clearing for the clash that'll finally decide everything. He blurred forward at blinding speed, and his blade carved clean through Zuma Kurai's torso. Then dark blood exploded from the wound as the assassin got whipped backward by the sheer impact. The assassin staggered, his face twisted in pure shock and searing pain as he grabbed the wound and his body shook, because the life draining out of him was finally taking everything. Even with a fatal wound tearing him apart, Azuma forced a grim smile, demanding his opponent's name. Then the boy stared right back and said it straight to Schweitz. When Azuma heard the name, he let out a weak chuckle, then paid his respects, still shocked that his own death could feel this exhilarating. And yeah, he was relieved he hadn't stayed behind to rot in the east. Curie let out a final, maniacal laugh, then his body blasted into a cloud of dark particles, scattering into nothing right in front of Alt. The immediate danger finally slipped away, and Alta let out a huge breath of relief, like he'd been holding it forever. Iris watched him and realized she hadn't seen him this locked in during a fight in ages. Still, he admitted it the whole time. Yeah, just like always, he'd been nervous. In the quiet clearing of the forest, he stood before her, and apologized for killing the two assassins right in front of her. Then he made it clear he was hoping this proved just how strong he really was. He told her the enemies were gone for good, said it was safe now, and reached out to pull her up. Then Iris stared at his hand, thanked him, and slipped her own into it. He gripped her hand like it was lifeline, kept his voice calm, and promised, "I've got you." Iris, still shaking from everything that just happened, finally looked him straight in the eye. Her sheer resilience froze him for a split second. He couldn't wrap his head around it. After watching a fight that brutal, she still stood there with her focus locked in, like nothing had hit her, and he started to wonder if she was even real. Later, deep inside one of the academy's rooms, Iris nodded. Her preparations were finally done, and the building sat eerily still beneath the sky, a cold silence after all that recent violence. He sat right across from her, swallowing his regret as he apologized for scaring her, because as her bodyguard he had to face what he did, especially since he was relieved she hadn't been hurt too badly. She shot him a reassuring look and admitted, honestly, she'd only gotten flustered, not hurt, while she noticed he sensei looked like he'd seen chaos like this 100 times. Then he smirked and told her the truth. He was born in a truly dangerous place, back in his so-called previous life. Her smile vanished and seriousness took over her face. Then she paused, hesitated, and asked again if he'd finally fight her for real, this time, because her question yanked him straight back to the promise he'd actually made. He kept pressing her, demanding why she was so obsessed with fighting him, and he knew the answer she couldn't see, that only a real life-or-death clash could show her what she was missing. If this turned into an actual fight right now, he'd already decided who would win. She snapped to her feet and turned away, her determination blazing in every word, swearing she'd degraduate from the school. That promise to her mother was sacred. Watching her, he felt his resolve splinter, because now he had to cook up a rock-solid reason to shut down her challenge without wrecking his mission. He freezes in surprise as Iris turns away and clutches her bandaged arm. Then, in a soft voice, she spills her dream. After graduation, she wants to become a knight. He flashes a warm smile and says, "Since I'm a knight too, I'm ready to grant your wish." He knows it'll sting the ones who want her gone from the throne, but he's convinced she's got the skills to win, and a faint smile flickers across her lips. Her face hardens again. She admits that chasing that dream, she sharpened her skills nonstop, never once losing, and that's why they call her the Sword Saint Princess. But still, deep down, she swears she hasn't gotten any stronger. She keeps whining that she's been winning nonstop, and just when her life turns slow and boring, her new instructor suddenly shows up at the academy. She leans in with pure grit and declares this is her moment to grow. No way she's letting it slip. And as she speaks, he suddenly sees how deep her conviction runs. She's ready to fight him, fully trusting her own strength, desperate to win and shatter the stagnation that's been holding her back. He weighs her desperate plea and realizes it would feel wrong to ignore the wishes of a potential future colleague. Iris watches him with sweat dripping down his brow, hanging on every word as he decides. He lifts his hand mid-thought, cutting her off, and snaps that her reasoning is annoying, because he has no idea how many fights it'll take before she gets the outcome she's chasing. Iris swings back immediately, sure he's trying to shut her down. Right before she can even finish, he clears his throat and spells out what he really means, special lessons, just for her. Then he leans in and says they'll meet after classes tomorrow so nobody else finds out. Finally, he shoots her a quick question, "Are you okay with that?" Her face tightens with pure resolve. Her only mission is to grow stronger. And when Alta clocks that fire in her eyes, she tells her they should start by training with practice dual-using enchantments. She finally cracks into a bright smile, leaving that old frustration in the dust, and she jumps at his offer to teach her, because he knows this is bigger than a favor. Now that he's her temporary instructor, he'll push her to grow, and that'll make his real job as her bodyguard way easier. But even so, he can't shake the crushing weight of how fast his responsibilities keep piling up. As they stride through the academy's massive hallways, he weighs every move in his head. This is natural. This is unfolding right on cue, and the moment feels tailor-made for exactly what he's about to do. He stops her on the stairs and says, "One last thing," then demands she use it nonstop, 24/7. When she asks what on earth it is, he flashes a grin and hands her a tiny, fan-like device, remembering her earlier promise to do anything to get stronger. At Fiorum Academy, a magical barrier snaps into place around the grounds, and a knight swears it'll stop any more trespassers. Yet OTZ Colstar just glares, jaw tight, muttering that things with the Kinkakushu have gone way too far. Just as OTZ steps to leave, he blurts out, "Where do you think you're going?" The young student looks back with a quick, sly smile and says he's only heading into town for a bit before he carries on. He storms into the crowded streets and dives into a tavern, right where Commander Lamire Owen sits waiting with a tanker in her hand, and she tells him she didn't have to come herself, but the incident was too important to ignore. Across from her, Alta just sits there and listens as she interrogates him for a full report on his very first mission, especially how he's coming along with Lady Iris. Lamir, I just told Iris the truth. No drama, we're already good with that girl. Then I dropped the bomb. I gave her a vital item to wear, and I already put a detection spell on it, so I'll know exactly where she is at all times. Back in the present, he slaps a diagram of the girls' dorms on the table and tells Lemire he'll be at Iris's side in 10 minutes if they strike right now. Lemire praises the work, then shoots him a stern warning not to abuse it, and Alta just laughs it off like it's nothing. Then the talk snaps to a new angle. He demands to know how deep they've gone in tracking the attacker. Alter fires back with grim updates. The guy in glasses wasn't some random. He was a convict with a nasty past, and the escapees probably weren't any better. And right when it feels like they're close, he slams the brakes. The real monster behind all this is the Kinkakashu. Commander Lamir Owen leans in and lays out the danger, tossing wanted posters across the table as she goes, telling you the Kinkakashu have been tearing through the world, and after digging deep, she's cracked their service records and bios. Now every member of this weird warm undergroup has a bounty on their head. She snaps at him not to let money blind him, saying she's heard the Kinkakashu move in tight little teams, and that means some could still be lurking right inside the royal city. Alta's stunned, and all he can do is choke out the bounty. He raises the drink to his wooden mug and admits, yeah, this mess is real, and he hates that it's on him. With a sharp pinch of regret, he realizes he misread everything when he figured they'd just quit after he wiped out one of them, and it turns out that was a terrible move. Now he knows the truth. He should have killed the man only after he'd forced answers first. Then his commander cuts in and reveals a small pack of ruthless black knights is hunting a runaway, an escapee who's a first officer with the same rank as him, codenamed *Blue Sword***, and asks if he's ever crossed paths with the guy. Alter admits they've met in the field, trading passes on missions, but they've never had the chance to introduce themselves. She leans in and admits it. She's always let him run wild on his own, and that's exactly how he kept his real identity hidden from everyone. She even used an alias to sneak into the school, so she had to bring in a trusted agent to deal with everything out there. She grins and calls the Blue Sword young, then adds that he's seriously capable, all while being bright and cheerful, saying once this mission ends, they should all hit the town for drinks together. Alta, wrapped in his own sip of hot milk, mumbles that he's underage and won't touch alcohol, but hey, he's still excited for the night. The commander leans in with the pitcher, teasing him to quit clinging so hard to his stubbornness and just take a drink, but Alta slaps her mug away, telling her to knock it off and snapping back that if anyone should be adamant, it's the commander herself. She pauses, then shrugs out, well, yeah. Her face hardens again as she tells him the worst news. They've found zero proof tying the mastermind to the attack on Lady Iris, so his mission stays locked in. Keep guarding her, no distractions. She even mentions she's heard what Blue Sword can do, but right now it's nothing but waiting for clues to finally surface. Every piece of tech snaps to attention with one clean Roger. Beyond the royal city, crumbling arches loom as darkness rolls in, and heavy shadows start to gather in the ruined Grand Hall. In these ruined halls, the Kinkakashu are sneaking in for a secret meeting, and there's a hooded leader on a throne of rubble, judging everyone else as they loom in the dark. From a seated shadow, their hood hides half their face as they speak, icy, absolute, confirming the truth. Azuma is dead. The young swordsman yanks his hood back and flashes a mocking grin, scoffing that Azuma meant to finish his target, yet ended up dead himself. Then he waves it off and demands who those members were that ran. The leader doesn't even blink. He snaps at the swordsman to get out of his sight, and they swear they don't need someone as worthless as him, but the swordsman just nods and turns to lay. But as he spins around, the leader lifts a tiny cylinder. Then boom, a blinding flash detonates the air, and his calm voice rings out, ordering everyone to stop unnecessary killings. The swordsman snaps around in a furious blur, jaw clenched as rage twists his face. He barks at the leader to say what they want, calling out that an assassin who won't strike is worthless, then declaring that all they truly needed was the Kinkakashu. Right then, a third party crashes in. Some kid with spiky light hair slips in behind the leader and jams the cold edge of his blade against their throat, while the leader doesn't move an inch, eyes shut tight. His blade stayed rock steady, but the tense stare-down got shattered when a hulking brute burst from the shadows, an immense, bearded Kinkakashu fighter, gripping a strangely curved sword as he roared, "Stop right there." Because members aren't allowed to hurt each other while they're on duty. The leader leaned in as the hooded swordsman grinned about the chaos, then said he wanted to spar with the young knight himself, right after the leader corrected one key detail. Azuma didn't fall to the sword Saint Princess, he lost to her instructor. With a quick nod, the leader gave the swordsman the green light to attack. Before the duel could even start, the Great Hall erupted, armored soldiers rushed in from everywhere. A squad of knights surrounded the assassins, and as their commanders stepped forward, they basically admitted what he'd been fearing all along. He'd finally cornered them. He told them he'd been running non-stop clearance missions through outlaw-filled territory, and then his crew pounced on the spiky-haired kid, Beltruso, the blue sword. While the Kinkakushu boss took it in, the impatient hooded swordsman snapped, demanding to hear what happened next. A huge bearded enforcer barked that before they touched anything else, they had to crush the knights first, and the hooded swordsman just grinned, praising the knights' bravery for daring to stand up to them. The Kinkakushu leader snapped out an ornate hilt, and the second it flared, blinding light poured from the tip, shaping into a blade made of pure energy. The knight commander stared, shocked, because there was no real physical blade at all. He called out coolly, saying they already knew his name made everything way easier, then slammed down an ultimatum. He wouldn't kill them if they didn't resist, but he was taking their leader into custody no matter what. Spitting out the offer, the leader slammed forward, then snapped his energy blade with a thunderous swing, unleashing a storm of dark, razor-edged projectiles that screamed straight for the knight's formation. First Officer Beltruso stands alone in the ruins, surrounded by the fallen Kinkakusha, his sword raised and ready to strike, while the stone courtyard lies choked with bodies from his fast, brutal counterattack, grim determination burning in his eyes, blood streaked across his cheek. Just as the Kinkakushu leader turns to bail, Bell yells out, warning them about their promise to stop wasting killing, so the leader snaps it off like it's nothing and insists it was necessary, while the big, bearded enforcer beside him lets out a chuckle and basically says, yeah, he doesn't get why Bell's even mad. The leader tosses out a casual goodbye and starts his parting, then Bell snaps into motion, rage blasting through him as he lunges forward, roaring, sword lifted high for the kill. Right before the attack hits, the leader blasts out a raging wave of water that whirls and smashes over Bell, while another Kinkakusha member looks on in horror at how cruel their crew really is. Then the leader grins and says they just want to have fun, even suggesting that if you love killing, you should get the chance. As the brutal clash finally dies down and the sun climbs up, Iris Reenfell stands in the Firearm Academy courtyard, relentlessly honing her sword skills. Her lonely training explodes into a real sparring match. She locks eyes with another girl student and blasts out a fast chain of strikes, their blades screaming as they ring through the quiet morning. From the sidelines, Alta, wearing his instructor disguise, gives a sharp nod and tells the students to build their own training routines, while Iris's companions stare in awe, swearing she's unbelievably cool, and one student even blurts out if she could grab a one-handed sword too. Arya Natria keeps watching him, and before he can even react, she storms up with a shaky, distressed face, bursting to Alta's sensei that Kenjutsu is totally not her thing, and then snapping, why can't nobles just hire a knight to protect them instead of forcing us to learn to fight? She kept snapping at Iris, insisting that even if she ever became a knight, she'd never lift a finger to protect her, and honestly, watching it play out, Alta found it weirdly calming. He even thought about how that Kenkakushu attack had been buried before anyone could find out. He sized up the students in front of him, all stuck at the national school level, where most people treated Kenjutsu like it was only for the nobility, and not for someone like Iris, the sword saint princess and a shoo-in for the next king. He'd figured that once the recent crisis was shut down, she'd finally lock in on her lessons. Then he caught her peeking at him like, hey, look at me, pay attention. Just as he got lost in his thoughts, Arya snapped his attention, her voice sharp, straight to the point. Sensei. She stepped forward, hesitated for half a breath, then spoke straight to him, while Iris stayed hidden behind, watching every word. Her eyes flashed with steel resolve. Let's duel. She snapped and he froze, totally stunned. She was totally stunned, firing off questions in her head like, why would I challenge him right now, on our very first real conversation? Then Arya spilled her reason. She knew the secret move he used on Iris back on day one, the one that made his opponent get drowsy. She'd seen it, and she also knew it was the only technique he ever actually took seriously, so she leaned in and demanded it. Use it on me. As Iris rushed over to ask Arya what was going on, Alta's mind snapped back to their very first mock battle, one that fizzled out the moment the time ran out, ending with no clear winner. He grinned and nodded her on, go ahead. I don't mind if we duel again, he said, and Arya's face lit up as she clenched her fists, letting out a tiny victorious cheer. His decision to accept the duel sent shockwaves through the crowd, and Iris Reenfell in particular looked totally rattled. Her cheeks went red as she stammered that she'd already done something, while her companions just stared, baffled by why she reacted that way. Iris stumbled over her words, and just like that, Arya snapped into action. She declared she was ready, strode forward, and two glowing circular devices formed in her hands, while across the hall Alta stood waiting with his sword hanging loose at his side with She didn't waste a heartbeat. She slammed her power on, and a glittering mandala of bladed shields erupted around her, spinning into a fortress that looked defensive and downright terrifying. Eyes shut, she stood right in the middle like she owned the storm. Her eyes snapped open like blades, blazing with cold, unshakable focus. He locked eyes with her unshakable stare, tightened his grip on the sword with both hands, and with a face he couldn't quite read, he only begged her, "Please, don't go too hard on me." During training, Alta watches Arya Natria like it's a showdown. She stands locked in, dual-wielding two mock swords with terrifying control, pulling off a move so brutal only the toughest can handle it. She has to pour equal magical power into both weapons at the exact same time, and at this whole academy, she's the only one who can. He surges forward like a streak of lightning, but Alta stays ice calm, mock sword up and waiting, daring her to strike the moment she's ready. In the blink of an eye, she's on him. Her blade stops inches from his face, and he just locks eyes with her, calm as she closes the distance. Up on the balcony, Iris Rienfeld and a handful of students stared down as the duel exploded into motion, and on the training field below, Alta planted herself on the ground, ready to strike again. Maria hammers forward in relentless assault, and the moment her rapid strikes land, surprise flashes across her face. He clashes into her whirlwind of strikes, his single blade snapping up to deflect her twin weapons with razor-precise moves as she spins and drives forward with relentless thrusts. The crowd is left reeling. One of the guys blurts out in disbelief that Oria's movements look like a cat's, and Iris's companion can't even process it, staring in shock and demanding how Oria can move that fast. A hit lands and Fala immediately takes another strike. Then Arya snaps into a new form of power, blasting dark, ornate magical energy from both of her mock swords straight at him in one crushing surge. As she surged into her attack, Alta stayed razor calm, studying every move, while he clocked her skill too, realizing she was methodically hunting for the single weak spot in his defense. She snapped the quiet, demanding to know what was wrong, and Arya's face tightened as she said she'd been testing new ways to do it, while Iris, off to the side, could only think Arya should have kept it more traditional. With a sharp declaration, she exploded forward, her body turning into a blur. Alta immediately clocked that her speed had jumped even higher, and a nearby student just stared, totally stunned. Steel screamed through the air as she tore loose with a rapid barrage of strikes, and he snapped up to block every single hit, his blade standing firm like an unbreakable wall against her endless assault. Her feet kept skipping over the training floor, driving forward non-stop as strike after strike came flying with no break in sight. As he dodged her next strike, it hit him hard. This wasn't just talent, it was pure, battle-tested experience. He clocked her as so seasoned she might even stand toe-to-toe with Zuma Korai of the Kankakashis. Once he realized the duel had done its job, he snapped at her that it was over, because her skills were already proven, and that deadlock standoff was going nowhere, especially with her refusing to give him even an inch of space. She shoved his words aside and kept swinging, then he snapped forward, clamped onto her wrist, and yanked her blade to a stop right before it could land. "I told you stop," he barked, voice iron solid. He takes her hand and fires back that she's one to talk, and Arya drops her gaze, thanks him, and admits he really is strong after all. Her face loosens into a calm, near-relieved smile as she tilts her gaze up at him, hunting for his confirmation, right. The whole room erupts in applause, students pounding the air like thunder, shouting praises for the insane skills each fighter just showed. With the crowd roaring, Arya whips away from Ulta and sprints to Iris, blurting if she actually saw her performance, and Iris beams back, telling her yes, and shouting that Arya was absolutely incredible. But Iris's praise gets yanked into a curveball. She turns it into a pointed question. Iris reminds Arya that earlier she swore she wasn't interested in fighting anyone except her, and Arya freezes mid-breath, weighing the contradiction. With a warm little chuckle, Iris gently pats Arya's head and asks what all that was about, and Arya lights up like she's been given a spotlight. From the distance, Alta just watches in quiet approval, already getting it, donning S on him. He clocks that Arya's moves are basically her trying to win Iris back over, and honestly, it's kind of cute. Then he files a mental note. Next time, don't let her decide to attack him just because she's jealous. Alta snaps his hands together and refocuses on the whole class, then announces it's time for everyone to hit training again. He wraps up the training by urging the students to push forward at their own pace, then a small smile tugs at his lips as he thinks, and yeah, Iris and Arya, those two don't fit the rule, while the rest of the class lets out weary sighs, crushed by his brutal high standards. As the academy's bell tower rings out the end of the day, he strides alongside the other instructors, and they thank him for all his hard work, while the whole group's lively chatter swells through the courtyard as they head out. He lets out a shaky sigh of relief, convinced his duties are finally done. Then Iris snaps his focus with a call. She'd suited up and even grabbed a fake sword just to dodge suspicion, and she pushes him hard to get going, leaving him to agree with a startled kind of disbelief. They stumble into a hidden wooded spot, and Iris wastes no time. She declares she'll stay on his side until sunset. He clocks her fierce determination, then tells her to take it slow. His calm voice makes her blurt out, "Is this just some casual fight to you?" She shoots back that her real goal is to watch his skills up close, and he realizes her excitement is pushing her into reckless territory. She points out how wildly suspicious it would look if another student caught them together like this, right now. Iris's face floods with heat. She sputters for a second, then snaps herself back together. She reminds him that since this was her idea, their private training has to stay completely under wraps, and she nervously swears to it without missing a beat. With their session terms locked in, he yanks his sword free, and as soon as it's out, a spinning, gear-like shell of light blooms around the blade. He leans in and tells her to stare hard, asking if she can actually see what's unfolding. Then he whips out a devastating sweeping slash, like the air itself warps and bends around his magically boosted blade, while Iris stares, completely frozen in awe. He whips around to Iris, eyes locked in a serious stare, and fires off a question about that technique he just pulled off. Then Iris nods and says she can recreate it. She snaps her sword up and surges into position, her blade slicing a blazing, thunderfast arc through the air. Her attempt flops plain and simple, and with a sharp, frustrated sigh, she admits she just couldn't see the technique clearly enough to counter it. He watches her with calm approval, saying her honesty is exactly the kind of strength to have. Then he makes it clear that she can't copy it, but she's already got the speed and the control to block his attack, and that realization snaps the shock straight across her face. She freezes where she stands, and the idea of an invisible blade slams through her mind as she scrambles to decode what he just meant. He keeps going, bringing up swordsman Azuma Karai, the one who'd already set his sights on her, and reminds her that Azuma could weather that kenjutsu, so she shouldn't have any reason to fail at it either. From where he stands, Iris's potential looks just like Azuma's, so he decides right then he's going to give Iris that same brutal challenge. Iris blurts out her doubts. She's not doubting him, she's doubting herself, because how can she fend off an attack she can't even see? While that fear twists in her chest, he just stands there under the tree, silent and unshakable, with calm resolve, and leaves quietly drifting down around him. With a sharp, effortless sweep, he flicked his blade through the air, light flashing as it split a shower of falling leaves with unreal precision. The moment the display popped, Iris froze. She demanded to know if he'd really sliced the leaves without even looking. He nodded and explained it was just like the way she'd sensed the killing intent from that dagger aimed for her shoulder. It breaks down the idea that the power to sense without looking is what people call the sixth sense. He said this was the exact same power Azuma used to shove his invisible blade back. Then he flat-out claimed that if Iris could use it, she'd breeze through everything with zero trouble. He admitted this would be rough, since leaves have no killing intent, it would get tricky, but he said that's exactly why they were training, and he pushed her to try anyway. After a beat of hesitation, she finally agreed. She drew in a deep breath, steadied her nerves under the tree, and let the falling leaves swirl around her like a countdown. Eyes shut tight, she burst forward, whipping her blade through the air in a huge, ruthless arc, aimed to strike the instant he sprang. Her blade sliced through nothing but empty air, and everyone just watched as she tried. Then she said, cool as ice, "Nice try, you missed." You couldn't miss Iris's face tightening with pure frustration. He tells Iris to breathe. This isn't something she can crack overnight, so she shouldn't give up. But he also warns her that if she can't learn this sense, then another duel between them would just be pointless. Her face tightens with pure resolve as she declares she's doing it, and he immediately raises the leaf again, telling her to lock onto where it is first. After that, his life became a non-stop juggling act, running Iris, training session one moment, then suiting up as her bodyguard at the academy the next, with him sweeping the grounds long after midnight. On that oddly quiet night, his thoughts finally got interrupted when the academy's huge, glowing barrier seized his attention. He rushed in to inspect it, and after checking everything, he was sure there was nothing wrong with how it worked. Commander Lamire Owen closes in from behind, grilling him as he wonders why he's suddenly being called to the academy. She blurts out that she'd rather he not step beyond the academy's barrier, an unexpected warning that makes Sam jolt in. Lemire breaks the news that they're not even at the academy, they're stuck on a corner of the royal capital, and just like that, the whole situation spirals downhill fast. With a hard, grim face, she drops the news. Out in a distant church, the pursuing crew led by Beltruso, the Blue Sword, has been found dead. Inside the academy's reception room, a crushing silence smothers the air. Commander Lamire Owen and Alta Schweit sit on opposite couches, while OTZ Kolstar stands by the fireplace with his arms locked across his chest. Hilda whips her head toward the commander, and you can see his worry in every breath. He demands to know if she's okay. Lamire keeps her eyes locked on the sword hilt at her side and snaps out a quick yes that doesn't fool anyone. She starts her report with a steady voice, even as her appearance screams danger. Then she drops the bombshell. 9 corpses from the chase, led by First Officer Beltrusso, are sprawled in an abandoned building. And the worst part, there's still no word on whether the last guy is alive or gone, so they have to sit tight and wait for him to come back. Blood and debris painted a brutal picture of the scene, and she kept going. Sure, there were traces Bell fought back, but there wasn't a single magic mark anywhere, not a shred to prove he'd actually landed a hit on his enemy. Alta processes the chilling truth and realizes the pursuers got utterly crushed. OTZ stares in total disbelief, but Alta locks in on one conclusion: this new enemy is even stronger than Azuma. His eyes snap back to Lemire, and you can practically feel her agitation crackling in the air. He spots the restlessness in her, because how do you stay calm when you're a commander who bleeds for every one of your subordinates? Her hand clenches into a fist as she boils with fury, refusing to believe Bell could lose without ever swinging a single blow. He drops back into his chair, and the shadows thicken around him as a quiet kind of resolve hardens on his face, because it finally clicks. This isn't something he can pretend he doesn't know. He snatched the device off the table and realized Beltrusso had left them something, an audio recording that captured every chilling detail of his final moments. After the recording ended, Commander Owen nailed their conclusion on the spot. The enemy was the Swordsman Gang, led by a woman who already wiped out parts of Bell's party, and backed by a man who killed Beltrusso with his own hands. She kept going, telling Alta and OTZ that the third member, the killer, was already rushing toward the academy, and that this guy was impossible to track, so he could crash in at any second. She clocked the lucky break. Just one enemy was coming, because she was sure only her and Alta could even fight back. Then she squared her shoulders and promised him a warm welcome. He just shot back, Roger. Agreement locked in. Lemire formally demanded their help, given the danger, and she ordered OTZ to keep everyone off campus if the fight ever spilled past the barrier, even as all of them hardened their resolve inside. They weren't just soldiers, they were true knights. With a serious stare aimed at Z, he told Alta to stay calm, because once he was running the night patrols, he'd come straight to him the second anything weird popped up. The young instructor gave a small, knowing smile, agreed to the deal, and promised he'd submit a full log of his total hours, while Lemire snapped a sharp glare, accusing him of chasing overtime pay. After the briefing, the days slid by with a sickening calm. No new strikes from the Swordsman Gang hit the academy, and everything carried on like nothing was coming. A week had blown by since Alta handed Iris her assignment, and all that time she hammered her training in a hidden forest clearing, long hair whipping around her shoulders as she stood locked in, practice sword raised and ready. With a sharp grunt, she finally put her training to work, her body a streak of motion as she sliced the blade through the air. Frustration twisted her face as she tried again, but even when she snapped her gaze to Alta, who was posted at the foot of a nearby tree, Alta confessed she could barely feel the falling leaves and still couldn't even make a dent in them. Her hand clenched into a tight fist, impatience roaring louder with every second. Rage flashed in her, then hardened into steel. She stared straight ahead, sweat slicking her face, and forced herself to believe this time she would not quit. Her resolve flared as she sprang forward, blades screaming through the air, just barely dodging another falling leaf that came down at her. He watched her choke on every move, face tight with thought. He'd expected it to take time, but the fact she couldn't cut down even one leaf was scary. This training wasn't even close to what she needed to survive the Swordsman Gang. So he started weighing a risky move. Should he drop his real identity as a knight? If she understood the danger for real, maybe it would finally light a fire under her. He shot that idea down instantly. Her hot-headed streak could send her storming off alone, no breaks. That thought left him grimacing, because if things went sideways, Iris herself could have him kicked out of the academy. He watches her struggle and battles with every option in his head. Even if the whole mess annoys him, he forces himself to follow the commander's orders for now, because he's sure Iris's training is the only thing that matters most. He bursts out from the trees and strides straight up to her, calling out to Iris right away, praising how every morning training has been paying off, then wondering if she's not pushing herself too far, just as she whips around, shocked by his sudden appearance. He cuts right to it, telling her he's just heard word that she's been dozing off in other classes, and since he's her homeroom teacher, he can't brush it off. Those accusations slam straight into Iris, and she goes wide-eyed and totally flustered. She blurts it out with stutters, blaming the morning practice, and then admits she still can't cut a single leaf. She swears training with Arya wasn't reckless, vows she'll be more careful next time, and her face shows the perfect clash of shame and pure frustration. He spots her scraped hands, battered and exhausted, and steps in at once, telling Iris she's taking the rest of the day off. Iris shoots back immediately, furious that they'd stop now, like her determination isn't exactly running the show. He calmly tells her he's ready to switch up the whole training method. Then, out of nowhere, he pivots and asks what she thinks about tagging along with Arya for a cup of tea. As he calls out her name, a voice snaps from behind a nearby tree. Arya. Iris whips around, stunned as her friend steps into the clearing, and Arya casually says she noticed Iris all along. Arya's eyes are wide, and she stammers that she thought she'd vanished perfectly, but he just stands there like it's nothing. Then he turns to the two girls and bluntly asks Arya why she's even here. Caught off guard, Arya jerks her gaze away, cheeks flushing as she admits she's been worried, telling him he's acting weird lately and that he's even stopped their morning practice sessions. He stays calm as he tells her he's known she's been tailing them for a whole week, and when she finally realizes it, shock hits her hard. Her eyes apologize fast, then she blurts out that she only asked their sensei for extra instruction. He flashes a smile and tells everyone to head to the dining hall so they can keep talking, and deep down he thinks it's the perfect move. No one got hurt. Iris gets a fresh change of pace, and with Arya's jealousy burning, she'll probably stop herself from dragging him into yet another duel. Arya smirks and flips the script. Since their sensei is already so strong, she insists it only makes sense for him to mentor her too, then boldly announces she's joining their training sessions from this day on. Her sudden declaration freezes Alta and Iris in their tracks, and all they can do is stare back in stunned, wide-eyed disbelief. He instantly panics, stammering, "That's not what I meant at all," as the two girls watching him lock eyes. She slashes his words away, steps in tight, and jabs a finger with total confidence, then tells him to shut up and take a break like, is it really even that big a problem? With it finally locked in her mind, she slips an arm around a startled Iris and whispers that this stays secret, just between them, while a defeated alt of his size grudgingly gives in, warning them to keep it hidden from the other students. She snaps the training session shut and declares they're finished for the day. While Arya takes it in stride, Iris looks completely wrecked, her face drained of color from sheer exhaustion. Even with her exhaustion screaming at her, she nods and answers out loud, because if Wet Sensei says it's time, then it's time to stop. Right before they can scatter, he cuts them off, saying, "Hold up, there's one more thing." Then he whips out a small, sharp dagger, and its blade glints like a warning. Arya shoots her arms out with a confident grin, completely unbothered, as a weapon suddenly crashes into the scene. She flashes Iris a reassuring wink and brags that she's got this, no problem at all. But Iris just stares, stunned, wondering if Arya is actually capable of pulling it off. He leans in and tells Iris that this blade isn't like anything she's ever fought before. Then Iris clenches her jaw and locks eyes on it, her face turning iron with pure resolve. As he watches them, he can't stop thinking about everything that's happening. Arya is still a mystery, but the mighty Ryan Fell family vouches for her, so he's sure this is the move that'll force Iris to level up faster. Once their training ends, they head back toward the academy buildings, and Iris waves him over. Tea sounds perfect while the sun's still out, but he shuts it down cold, saying he's going straight to bed, and the look on her face screams, seriously. Because apparently he's got that childish habit of sleeping early. He spun around and told him his sensei was swamped with work. Later, he strode through the city's empty streets, thinking, because of this curfew, nobody's out, no one at all. His thoughts got crushed the moment a figure tore itself out of a burst of dark energy right in front of him, because, yeah, someone else was out there. His gaze snapped to a severed, armored gauntlet in a fresh, ugly splash of blood on the cobblestones, while the hooded figure loomed nearby, a dark aura draining away from their hand. The hooded kid with light hair stepped up and stared him down, pointing at the bloody mess like it was a prophecy. "Cooperate or you'll end up just like that," and then he grinned and said he was the one who wiped out Izuma. He kept firing off taunts, sneering as he grilled whether Alta was really a teacher, then snapped his glare tight and demanded, was Alta the brat who'd slaughtered his comrades? The swordsman's fierce stance crumbled into pure shock, and he admitted he never saw Alta breaking the barrier, and charging straight at him from the front, coming. Alta just stayed calm and said, "Honestly, I didn't expect it either." Right behind them, the main gate exploded into splinters. Then a new warrior slammed down with a brutal crash and introduced himself as Folt Messina from the swordsman gang. He bragged that he'd come to kill Alta and the sword Saint Princess, and the hooded swordsman just grinned, thinking he'd take care of it like. In a lonely courtyard, Folt Messina stares down the kid in the dark cloak, a manic grin lighting his face as he snaps a command, "Draw your sword." The boy says nothing, just keeps his hand planted on his own hilt, quietly sizing Folt up in the dark. The protagonist gapes at that huge, segmented sword, like, is that even a blade? But Folt snaps his focus to something else, where the girl is. then tells him that once he's done with the boy, he'll come for the Holy Sword Princess too. The boy just bows his head and apologizes. The swordsman barks out a quick, cutting laugh, like he can't believe the boy would ask something like that so casually. The amusement drains away, and fury takes over. Then, with a brutal swing, he lashes his weapon around and roars at the boy to not try to outshine him. In one brutal snap, the segments lunge forward in a blur, stretching out like a lightning-fast chain and snaring the protagonist before he even has time to react. He reacts the second it moves, twisting his body just in time to dodge the deadly blade as it lunges out. He launches into the air and clears the attack clean, and mid-flight he studies the enemy's weapon, spots what it really is, and stretches the blade out. He realizes that staying back gets him nowhere, so he charges in and commits to a brutal close-quarters brawl. When he lunges, he studies the weapon up close and spots its segmented design. Volt lets out a cruel cackle as he confirms it. The weapon is called **centipede***, and that segmented blade cuts through the air, snapping into place like an almost unbreakable wall. The protagonist realizes its magic power that steers its smooth, snake-like glide. Then Folt shoves him on, barking that the kiddo has to draw his blade. He snaps into action and draws his own weapon, then holds the blade up, points to himself as Alta Schweitz, and calls the sword the Blue Shell Sword, a treasured heirloom from his family, before declaring that he's ready to fight. His opponents twist into wild grins, yelling that Alta must entertain him relentlessly, like there's no end in sight, until he's got his fill of madness. With a deafening roar, he hurls the centipede forward, and a gigantic segmented blade slams down toward Alta. Alta slips past the strike, but the non-stop barrage pins him in place. He can't get close. He clocks it. His opponent is way too careful. Then he tries to cut the threads tying the blade segments together, but nothing works, and the opponent almost laughs at the failure. Then he blurts out the real secret behind his weapon's durability. The threads are stitched from dragon hair, the toughest monster material on the planet. Then he soaks them in his own magic power to make them nearly indestructible. Alta takes it in, instantly clocking the nightmare waiting in front of him, and he realizes this won't be quick. It'll be a long war. But his opponent won't give him time at all, roaring that his attacks are getting faster right this moment. He planted his feet as the segmented blade screamed through the air, snapping and slashing like a metallic serpent. Then Folt Missinta, grinning like a maniac, yanked the weapon in control and pinned his opponent into a full-on defense, getting hammered by sheer assault. Every time Alta's sword crashes into the centipede's snapping segments, the impact erupts in sparks that scatter through the air. Blasts kept hammering down, yet he stayed ice calm, clocking every detail, feeling the sting of that vicious weapon in his gut, while Riley quietly figured out the training ground's repairs were probably coming straight out of his own paychecks. His opponent smirks and brags that he's the one driving the attack, yet he looks totally confused when Alta holds the line and keeps defending against the barrage. He can't help feeling bad for his opponent, but one thought burns in his head: those attacks aren't landing. A cool, controlled rage in his fault, like a fuse about to pop, snarls at him to knock it off, and he grits his teeth, driving forward with everything he's got, but his blows just won't break through, and he can't figure out why. Alta just shrugs it off and says he's not letting his opponent spiral out of control. Then he plants his feet hard and declares, "It's time to get to work." Suddenly, Folt's frustration flips into wide-eyed shock, and then his face contorts into this impossible grin, like some triumphant mannequin that's one. He bellows, convinced he finally snagged the opening. "I got ya." He swung his weapon, a frenzied chain of metal segments, with manic glee as the links ripped straight through the stone floor, but Alta stood in his way, unnaturally calm, stepping right into the attack's path. The brutal chain slammed down on him, smashed the ground to pieces, and blasted chunks of stone flying everywhere. But the scream of pain that followed was not Alta's. Folt froze in terror as his own arm crumbled into black dust, flesh and bone vanishing like it never existed. He shrieked in agony and shock, while Alta, perfectly untouched, loomed over him, her voice ice-cold as she demanded how Folt dared to pull off something like this. His centipede weapon suddenly went dead. Folt couldn't wrap his mind around it. There was no way Alta cut the magical thread that controlled it. From where he lay, Alta tilted his gaze up with calm, satisfied certainty, quietly savoring the moment his plan finally worked. He started spilling the truth about his power. His blue shell sword didn't just hit, it carried a built-in magic kicker. Since Fold's blade runs on pure magical power, Alt's sword became the perfect match to shut it down. Then he dropped the darkest detail. Every time his blade activates, it stacks up a counterfeit mana, poison that cancels magic and pins the target in place. With the explanation finally done, he snapped his blade up at the defeated swordsman, Folt Missinta, and his declaration hit like a hammer, leaving absolutely no room to argue. "You're under arrest." Folk could only freeze in stunned silence as Alter explained the delay, because Folt's weapon was so impossibly long it took forever. Now that he'd finally been subdued, Alta leaned in and told him he had plenty of questions that needed answers. A weak Folt's lips cracked into a defiant laugh. Alta is it, he rasped, while Alta stayed calm and told him to stop fighting back, warning that if he kept going, he'd lose his other arm too. Rage flared in Folt's eyes, and Alta only gave a faint smirk as he watched that stubborn resolve. So you're a knight, huh? Folt shot back. He pants hard in the black puddle where his arm used to be, but his eyes still burn with pure defiance as he clenches out, through sheer strain, that he hasn't been beaten yet. Right before he can pull off his next move, his body erupts in a violent blast of black fluid, splattering the cobblestones and leaving everyone watching in pure shock. As the shock finally fades, the young swordsman snaps his eyes up to a nearby rooftop. There, a lone silhouette stands against the sky, humming with a faint aura. A shadowy figure in a dark hood and a weird mask peers down from their hiding spot, and when Sor stares back, he just can't shake the feeling. Could this be the third one? Beneath the night sky, one more hooded hitman from the swordsman gang steps up to Ulta, and the second he spots that robe, he knows exactly who it is. Then he unveils a glowing orb, and it detonates into a blinding flash that lights up everything. Light sputters out as the attacker crumples dead on the cobblestones, and Alta stands over his body, watching the rest vanish into the streets. She figures the man was cut down so thoroughly, by someone everyone hated, that nobody dared step in. For a split second, he thinks about chasing, but when blood splashes his face, his mind snaps into place. He refuses to lose any more ground from Iris, not even for one last fight. He pushes the thought aside and strides up to the academy dorm, calling out for Iris, because he knows damn well students aren't supposed to leave their rooms at this hour. The door bursts open, and Iris Ryan stumbles down the steps with a worried look on her face. Then she admits she came out here to make up for the training time she lost earlier this afternoon. Her explanation cuts off mid-breath as she finally locks eyes with him, and when she spots blood on his face, her world snaps into place. She gasps, voice trembling, "Are you a knight?" He doesn't dodge it, just admits he's been caught. A while later, the heat finally dies down, and an outdoor fountain keeps running, washing the blood off his face, while Iris sits on a nearby bench, watching him in quiet silence. He whips around to face her, his fancy cloak hanging off his arm and a plain white tunic showing underneath, then declares it's finally time for a real introduction. He's a first-class officer of the Sirius Black Knights Order. Iris blinks, wondering if he's the legendary youngest knight who vanished 2 years ago, and he nods, saying, "Yep, and I'm also your undercover bodyguard at the academy." Harris's face fell as the truth hit, and she murmured, "I get it now. The academy had to know about that danger from the start." She settles beside Alto on the bench, staring into the truth as she realizes the assassination plot isn't finished, and the only one still clueless is her. Then Alto swivels toward her, and with a real apology on his face, admits he should have told her sooner. She brushes off his apology with a calm nod, saying it's fine because it's literally his job, and then she admits, straight to his face, that the swordsman gang is targeting her. Her smile turns to steel in a heartbeat, and her face hardens as she snaps that she doesn't need a bodyguard. Belsen died to protect her. Her thoughts tumble back to a past conversation, Alta and Bel Trusso in the room, where in the memory she leaned toward Bel and asked if he even knew Alta. He told them that Alta was the one he battled, and lost to in the Kenjutsu tournament finals when he was just 10, and then Bel said that after that, Alta rose up to become a knight and a first-class officer, a fact that slammed right into Iris like a bolt of lightning. That memory keeps stabbing at her nerves, and right now, she's trembling. She repeats, "You gave me a bodyguard," then whips around to Alta and demands to know why he's fighting it so hard. He stares at her, totally thrown off, and blurts out if something's wrong. Then Iris snaps her gaze away, flustered, because she just realized she slipped up. For a second, she'd actually thought she might finally uncover why Bel keeps fighting back, not why Alt is in the way. Her face tightens with pure resolve as she blurts out her real dream, to become a protector, just like her father, Gallo Reinfeld. As soon as Alta hears the name, he blurts out that he'd never met her father, but he definitely knew who he was as the former commander of the Sirius Black Knights Order. Iris stays calm and quietly admits, "I knew him too." She explains that her father, as the head of their family and as a knight, was a shield for his people, and to honor his will, she swears she won't fall to anyone. With the road ahead calling her name, she clenches her resolve and declares that if the swordsman gang is hunting her, she'll meet them head-on, no running. Then she throws in that she won't mind if Alta comes along to help take them down. He watches her and thinks, for a 15-year-old, that kind of grit is unreal. Sure, chasing the crown might explain her strength, but he can't shake the chill that something dangerous is lurking around her. Driven to dig deeper, he demanded one clear answer, because, as far as he knew, her father's assassin still hadn't been caught. His words hit like a hammer, and Iris snaps to attention, eyes blazing wide with pure shock. Then he pushes harder, straight up asking if she's chasing strength just to get revenge on her father's killer. That defiant mask finally crumbles. She stares down with a strained face, then quietly confesses she was only about 5 years old when it all went down. She reels back to a childhood memory that still warms her chest, when she'd beg her father, Gallo Reinfell, to train swordsmanship with her the moment he came home from duty, and as a little girl she'd grin bright and steady, clutching a practice blade right beside his towering armored figure. He was the kingdom's mightiest knight, the kind of legend she couldn't help but admire, and she still remembers tearing through their grand estate, shouting his name, desperate to start their training. But that perfect memory gets ripped apart the moment a brutal attack explodes out of nowhere. Her father throws himself in front of her, shielding her tiny body as a violent swirl of dark energy crashes around them, and all she can do is scream his name in pure terror while he chooses her safety above everything else. The moment after the blow still haunts her. Warm blood splashes across her face, and her eyes go wide, frozen in pure, helpless disbelief. After that crushing hit, her father crumpled to the ground, defeated, with his sword shattered beside him. Then a dark figure stepped in over his fallen body. The figure leaned in and spat out his disdain. He couldn't stand how Gallo left a hole in his defenses just to play hero for his daughter, treating her like some helpless, lil girl. He pressed on, telling her the truth. Her father had spared her life. Then the assassin leaned in with a terrifying request. Next time they met, she'd entertain him in her father's place. With those final words, the shadowy man spun around and strode off, leaving Gallo Rien's fallen body crumpled in a pool of his own blood. That day still haunts her like a knife. Her father's broken body sprawled among shattered swords, and her own face twisted in terror, frozen in a silent scream that never ends. Back in the present, that anguish has turned into a bitter, frustrated grimace. Alta watches as Iris finally admits she can't remember the killer's face. Even after 10 whole years, they still have no clue who the killer is or where he's hiding, yet she refuses to break, swearing her resolve won't budge as she vows she'll never quit her dream of becoming a knight who outshines her own father. Her declaration hangs in the air, and she whips around to face her instructor, her voice trembling with doubt as she asks, "Sensei, is revenge really the wrong path for me?" Her eyes flare with pure desperation as she blurts the question, voice shaking. "Tell me, isn't it right to hunt vengeance for my father?" He just stares, face set in an unreadable mask, and in his head he finally admits it. He's terrible at reading people's emotions, and he never once saw how heavy the burden she's been carrying really is. His thoughts barreled forward, and he remembered the promise he made, to train her, but somehow he still hadn't taught her a single thing. Now he wrestled with what to tell her, because she needs every bit of that training to get her revenge. Finally, he whips around to face her, his choice already locked in, then tells her he thinks it's okay. Her eyes go wide, and a tiny gasp slips out as she realizes he just gave her the approval she never saw coming. In the training grounds, Iris Reinfell stalks up to Alta Schweitz and blurts out a nervous question. Can she go after something? Her voice shakes as she asks it, and he just answers, yes. That's when she lays bare her real plan, revenge. They break it down like this. You need a reason to get stronger, no matter what it is. Whether you're a knight fighting to protect something you love, or you're training your power for revenge, it all comes down to one thing. Your motivation. Her internal war won't let her breathe, so he clocks it. She must have been sure he'd fight her desire, and if she thinks it's wrong, it's only because some part of her already believes that lie. He tells her that the self-disgust and hesitation are exactly what frees her progress as a sword wielder. She flashes that terrified Titan stare and asks if she should just throw away her revenge wish against her father's murderer, because she thinks his words mean, push it down. Then he shuts that down and tells her, plain and clear, the final choice is hers. It all hits harder as he delivers his core message, so swing for it with everything you've got, because what he's really saying is that she has to fully embrace her motivation if she wants to get stronger. After his thunderous declaration, Iris snaps silent. She bows her head, her face swallowed by shadow, wrestling with doubt as she can't find an answer right away. Just after that, his voice flips. Now it carries the weight of her instructor. He tells her straight up, as her teacher, he won't let her swing her sword just to feed revenge. Back in the training yard, Iris faces him with her eyes shut, gripping the wooden sword's hilt. Then a dark, thorny aura crawls up around the blade like her rage has a heartbeat. She snapped her blade forward with fresh, fearless conviction, the steel slicing through the air in a bright arc, because if it came down to it, she'd choose her sword every time to protect the people she loved. Watched her, realizing Iris had one mission that mattered most. She had to cast cider doubts. She actually did it. Her blade flared with clean, blinding light, and pure triumphant relief broke across her face. She snapped her gaze to him, dead set on her choice. No running, no retreat, and told him straight up she wanted to know what he planned next, even admitting she hadn't known he was a new student. When he showed up, she dropped her decision like a bombshell. She was staying at the academy. Then he made it official too. He'd stick around, not as her bodyguard, but as her instructor. With a small, confident smile, he said she'd still need his guidance because she was barely trained, and then he added that a teacher had to be there too, especially to handle the sword gang. After a beat of hesitation, she finally caved and reluctantly let him keep training, and he took her yes with a bright, cheerful grin. As they headed down the road, he suddenly shot her a question. Why did she swing her sword? Her eyes widened, and he went on to lay out his own reason. He fights so he can live a calm, easy life, and it left her totally, completely baffled. She bursts into laughter, eyes squeezed shut, convinced the reason given for the fight has to be nothing but a joke. As they keep moving, she starts thinking that if she can become as strong as her sensei, just for her own reasons, then the road ahead won't scare her. He asks if her motivation is childish, and she snaps back dead serious. Not even a little. His focus slips to the battered academy grounds, and he realizes with two sword gang members still standing, this incident can't stay hidden any longer. Later that night, he stands alone and stares at the academy from afar, replaying everything in his head, especially the one who fled, praying the people chasing after them find a way back safe. At that exact moment, a piercing shout cuts through the night as a hooded figure is spotted bolting across the shadowy grounds. A shadowy figure rockets through a tight alley, and those frantic footsteps clatter hard, sparks flying off the stone path with every step. Just when they think they've got out, their escape route gets slammed shut at the alley's end. Commander Lemire Owen waits, backed by a whole company of soldiers that seals every exit. She leans down on the cornered fugitive, smirking like she already won, and says, "An intruder fled the academy, and if that report is true, then this has to be them." She planted her feet and faced the silent, hooded figure head-on. One of her squad leaders shouted "Commander," but she snapped a hand up, freezing him in place. "Don't move." Then she leaned into the danger and made it clear. This one was hers. The figure didn't answer with words at all, just a low, quiet snicker that let the strange, ornate hilt show itself, and they laughed at the fact that even the commander had stepped out to greet them. While they talked, the hooded figure whipped it back bam, and revealed a woman with long pale hair and 3 dots stamped on her forehead. Lemire's eyes snapped shut with rage as he recognized that eerie, bladeless sword. Then he snarled her name like it disgusted him and drove a fist straight into the sword gang. Her voice turned to pure poison as a blazing aura surged around her, and she pointed at Fis, accusing her straight to the face, demanding to know if she was the one who killed her precious subordinate. The moment the confrontation broke out, a wave of destructive power ripped through the city street, windows exploded, and wooden buildings splintered into wreckage in an instant. While everything around her went wild, Fis Meaden calmly admitted she hated feudal brawls, then sighed that stirring up trouble was a pain too. With a single flick of her wrist, a blazing blade of pure energy exploded from the empty hill like it had been waiting there the whole time. 2 warriors sprinted into the middle of the ravaged street, blades crashing together with a thunderous impact that ripped shockwaves through the air. As the soldiers got ready to surge forward, their squad leader barked for them to halt, no chasing, and Lemire, still locked in her fight, felt the danger slam into her gut. If her opponent unleashed that sword's full power right in the middle of the city, everything would be catastrophic. She planted her feet and demanded a full report from her troops. Then a squad leader stepped up to say the good news. No civilians got hurt, and not a single one of their men fell. But the moment her own sword tip clattered onto the stone, frustration hit hard. She muttered a curse and kept staring at distant Fismeden, still standing tall among her soldiers. The very next morning, posters were slapped up outside the firearm academy. After the sword gang's attack went public, the school shut its doors for good until they said it was safe again. At the school gates in Alta's role as a teacher, he waved off the worried students, swearing Iris was okay and urging everyone to go home. Yet Arya stayed put, eyes burning with worry for Iris-sama. Meanwhile, Iris and Alta huddled on the balcony, staring down at the now-empty schoolyard in tense silence. Arya's arrival shattered the quiet moment, and Iris offered to let her go home too, but Alta cut in hard, saying he wouldn't leave Arya alone with someone who'd betrayed her, and Arya didn't budge, refusing to leave with a look that screamed determination. Iris turned to her as Arya spoke in a low voice, and Arya admitted that last night she'd forced Alta to spill everything, leaving Iris staring back with a nagging question in her eyes. Was this really the right call? Iris finally realized he was a knight, and her face fell as she mumbled an apology. Arya shot back, instantly telling her it was okay, because she'd felt from the start this would happen the second he was found. Then Arya grinned and added, "Good news, now I get to stay right by your side." Support seems to spark Iris into action. Her face hardens with pure resolve as she fires back at Alta, insisting that yes, it's sudden, but they have to start her training right now. Arya shot her a smug grin and cheered, bragging that Iris finally managed to slice through a leaf, like that was a real training milestone, while Iris blushed, fumed, and tried to shake off the embarrassment, and Arya just let out a satisfied sigh, somehow still one step ahead. She's completely stunned when Arya proposes a duel between them. Every chime seems to demand, why not? He shrugs and reminds them that they dueled every single day before he arrived, then admits he's dying to watch, leaving Iris flustered and completely stuck for words. The moment she imagines it, her hesitation vanishes. She grips her sword and yanks it free, the blade shrieking as it leaves the scabbard. In a forest clearing, she snaps into position across from Arya, and both of them square up like they're about to explode into action. Alta watches from the distance, tense, as they're moments away from starting. Arya surges in and starts a ferocious brawl, her blades slamming into their steel as her blows blur together, ringing loud with every clash. She slams in the assault, moving like lightning, swift, sharp, and exact, until she spots the opening strikes and declares her victory the moment her blade lands. But Iris plants her feet and lets her sword take the hit, blocking the strike cold. Arya's eyes flare wide, because she instantly realizes that same blow would have ended everything in their last duels. The duel suddenly freezes, steel grinding as their blades lock in a brutal standoff, while Arya gapes, stunned by how fiercely Iris fights back. She beams and asks if this means she finally won, but Arya hangs her head in quiet defeat and admits, flat out, that she lost. With pure sportsmanship, Arya reaches out and pats Iris on the head, and it's clear she's officially stronger than before. Her sweet gesture makes Iris' cheeks flare with pure embarrassment, and she blurts out to stop. Arya laughs it off and says Iris always does that to her, so she just wanted to return the favor and shake Iris out of her usual sleepy days. While the head paddles on, Iris snaps that they can't pull something like this in front of their sensei, and from up close Alta stands there watching every move, his face tight with thought. It hits him Princess Sword Saint didn't just pick any partner, she had the perfect one all along, and he finally sees it. Iris's ability to snap into action, even when attacks slip into her blind spots, comes straight from training that sharpened her sixth sense. Newfound confidence sharpened her gaze, and for the first time, she looked laser-focused instead of holding back like she always used to. He realizes this is just the minimum she needs to survive a real fight with him, and he's forced to admit she's cleared her first training phase. She's already learned how to dodge hidden strikes, the kind that look like his own invisible technique. He whips his eyes to Iris. She's radiating fresh power, and he's already convinced this training is everything. It's the only thing that might keep a stubborn girl like her alive. He declares it's time to blast into the next stage of training, and Iris and Arya immediately light up and agree with full force, ready for whatever hits them next. As they gear up, Arya's eyes lock onto the sword at his hip, and she asks if he's really going to use it, only for him to shake his head and say he won't be fighting with that blade. Right then, a whole new ornate blade materializes in his hand, blazing with raw power. He snaps an order to Iris that her only job is to block his strikes, and her jaw practically drops. He tells her he's cranking up the speed and orders her to give everything she's got to defend. Then Iris, with pure determination in her eyes, nods and steps in beside him, trusting him with the hard part ahead. The duel erupts out of nowhere. Right on the first beat, Iris snaps her blade up and parries his brutal opening strike. Their blades stay locked, so he shoots a quick thought to himself. This basic pace is nothing for him. He tells her that this simple one-on-one brawl actually gives her the upper hand. Then he slams the countdown for the second speed stage, and Iris's face locks in, razor-focused. She calls out his next move, 5 strikes in a row, and Iris yells, yes, right as that very first hit slams into the guard. He slammed into the fight with a swiping blur sword and tore forward with a deadly 5-hit combo, one after another, while Iris, locked in and focused, blocked every single strike with her own blade. Their blades collided with a deafening final blast, and as Iris sucked in a shaking breath, she knew this was the end of the whole sequence. She froze in surprise when he apologized, then admitted he'd meant to go the whole way, and before she could overthink it, he grinned and told her her performance was already more than enough from the start. As their session wrapped up, another student surged forward, and Arya Natria shot her hand up, smiling like she already owned the moment, announcing, "It's my turn next." She marched up to him, all set for her own test, proud to prove she'd nailed the 3-strike series, and then she pushed the idea. Now it was time to go for 5. Without a second thought, he lunged into the assault and fired off that same brutal 5-hit combo at Arya. Then Iris, jaw dropped because Arya blocked every single strike, clean and perfect. Iris's perfect showing left her frozen for a second, hand flying up to her face in pure disbelief, and she couldn't stop thinking that Arya had stolen the lead again. And judging by Arya's smug shrug, she was loving every second of it. He watched their reactions like a hawk, then stepped in to set the record straight. Arya could defend like that because she'd seen the technique once before, and he still gave Iris serious props. But when he realized she pulled it off with zero prior knowledge, pure amazement hit. Now that he knew they were basically on the same level, the real training could finally start. Then he fired off his next challenge, telling Iris and Arya to rush him together, right at the same time, and Iris froze, thrown completely off, demanding to know if he really meant for them to strike simultaneously. He flashed a confident grin and told them straight up, "Go ahead, if you two somehow manage to take me down, I won't even sweat it." Then he leaned in with total certainty, "I can handle this." Their faces hardened into grim resolve as Arya whipped around to her rival and pushed, "Come on, Iris, let's do it." Iris snapped back, with a firm yeah, then tightened her grip on her sword like she meant it. Two students surged ahead and boxed in their instructor as he dug in, and right before they struck, a wild thought hit him. Seeing people grow thrilled him, and somehow he didn't hate teaching after all. Turns out being a teacher wasn't so awful. Now all three of them stood ready to collide, eyes locked, faces burning with focus. After the training ends, Alta claps them on the back for a job well done and slams the brakes on the day, 1 hour off. As he heads away, he can't help smiling at how much he loves guiding eager young people to grow. Then Commander Lemire Owen calls his name and drags him straight into a serious talk about what they're about to do next. A reception room, she jumps straight into it, grabbing his arm with worry and asking how it's holding up, because one more careless step the last time could have cost him the whole thing, and Riley snaps back that this is just the price for spending his life stuck behind a desk. He swats away her worry like it's nothing, insisting his safety is guaranteed. Then he grimly admits they still couldn't grab their target. Without missing a beat, he steers the conversation to her drinking, and she shuts him down cold, refusing to back off. Ignoring his remark, Lemire shuts him down and jumps right into it. She raises a picture of their old enemy, Fismeden, then declares they've finally pinpointed the other two power players in the sword gang. She breaks it down, saying that from the recordings and what the other attackers' eyewitnesses saw, all the blaveless swordswomen could spot was a faint trail of the path, and she tells Alta she couldn't even make a guess about what kind of strikes they were. Lemire lays out two profiles. First, Adelgratz, an ex-mercenary from the warfronts who's now the sword gang's number 1, the strongest blade in the crew. Second, Fismeden, the user of a bladeless sword who sliced her own arm open and killed Folt, confirmed as the gang's number 2. As Alta flips through the papers, something feels off. How does a crew this deadly go after a 15-year-old girl, even if she's a ruler candidate? She rushes in with an apology, guessing the sword gang aren't villains at all. They're thrill-seeking assassins who feed off the fight, and she's sure their real motive is the buzz around Iris Reenful. The Sword Saint Princess, crowned as the strongest title ever. With that, Lemire shuts down her briefing and admits that's all she's got for now, so the room shifts fast, because it's time to plot what comes next, and Alta snaps his gaze up from the papers, ready to lay out his findings and dive straight into the strategy. He lounged in a fancy room, eyes locked on the window, and shouted to make sure Arya was there. Outside the window, Arya Natria leaned in, stunned that he'd sensed her presence when nobody else ever did, while Commander Owen, standing right there, jumped and admitted he hadn't seen her at all. Then Arya watched as he demanded the commander do one thing for him, now. Inside, Arya knelt by the window, and when he demanded why she was there, he admitted it was wild how slow he'd been to notice her, until she said she'd seen him with the commander. She explained that Iris had finally caught her attention, so she went digging right away. Then he shoved the warning down her throat, "Don't let a single thing slip." Just then Iris Ryenfell burst into view in the doorway, and Arya jerked his head, beckoning her inside, leaving him stunned. With everyone finally packed into the room, Commander Owen stepped forward and greeted Lady Ryenfell like it was a reunion after years. "It's been a long time." Iris nodded back just as formally. Iris cut right to the chase, demanding whether the commander's injury was the sword gang's doing. Then Lemire Owen flinched, looked away with a pained grimace, and apologized, saying it was a disgrace and that her duties had kept her from handling it properly. Then he seized the briefing like a command center, telling the whole group that the next enemies were the sword gangs, plus the two deadliest assassins. He swore that among the serious Black Knights, he was the only one who could face them, but he also warned they'd never know when or how the blow would land. Commander Owen barrels in and roars his name with pure rage, snapping him out of nowhere, and before he can even respond, Iris makes it clear she already knew he was a knight. All he can do is admit, yeah, this is exactly how it is. He tears his focus away from the commander's fury and locks onto Iris, her face heavy with sorrow. Then he bluntly asks what she plans to do next. She steadies her voice and squares up to the commander, saying she wants to stop any more damage because she's protecting every member of the order in the process. Then the commander's face hardens as she listens. With grit in her eyes, Iris lays out the plan. She tells everyone to pull the enemy somewhere civilians won't get hurt, and then she stuns them by saying, "Think of me as the bait." The commander lowers her gaze, her voice turning gentler for a beat. Then she apologizes for how that order backfired and forced this mess, admitting she's finally realized Iris will still back their cause. Her tiny moment of humility evaporates in an instant, and a brutal glare takes its place as she screams that she disagrees with that plan completely. With the commander's refusal still hanging there, he stared into the mess he'd landed in. He couldn't spill the truth to Iris about his undercover teaching mission, and he couldn't explain the whole situation either, because the commander had ordered Iris kept out of it. This hit him like a lightning bolt. Now the standoff makes sense. He knows the only shot forward is Iris stepping in herself, winning the commander over and getting her strategy accepted. He locked eyes with Commander Owen and answered her straight on no doubt, no hesitation, saying he'd already chosen to be a knight in the future. With resolve blazing in her eyes, Iris Reenfell planted her feet and let her conviction roar. She swore she wasn't scared to lay down her own life to shield others. And if someone truly stepped forward as a sacrifice for her, she insisted that she'd make it right by taking the burden alone. Commander Owen just stared, completely stunned by the fire in her words. He snapped at her to stop saying things like that, warning her that if she died, every life lost to protect her would become pointless. Then he gripped the moment and told her people are meant to live, because he had absolutely zero plans to die himself. Iris' face turned stone solid, resolve locking in her eyes, so she declared she'd fight, staring Owen down without flinching as Commander Owen watched her. Hearing that, her friends surged forward as one. Arya Natria flat-out refused to let her face the fight alone, and her other companion immediately shouted the same. The sudden intrusion jolted Commander Owen, and he barked, "Who are you?" Iris started talking fast, saying one of them was tied to the Reenfell family. Pigtails bouncing, the girl proudly introduced herself as Arya Natria, smugly praising her own great name, then slung an arm around Iris like they'd always been sisters, saying it made perfect sense she'd show up to protect her, while Alta leaned in to the commander and murmured that sure, her students were heroic, but these two, they were on a whole different level. Then he snapped his focus onto the two girls. Since he'd already tested their skill with his sword, he leaned in and asked if either of them wielded any special magic. He and Commander Owen lock onto Iris's friends as they flex their powers. One cracks the air with lightning, and Arya drags up swirling dark energy. And in that moment, it hits him. This is the exact power he's been searching for. He turns to the commander with a confident grin and says the girls have more than enough power to team up with him. Then he formally takes Iris' proposal and vows he'll handle the sword gang himself. Commander Owen's expression hardens instantly. She snaps back that this plan is not okay for someone like the Knight Commander. Right beside her, Iris watches with a worried face. Her hard, stern front cracks a little as she keeps going, and she admits she can't just shut down someone who's charging ahead with that kind of conviction for whatever they're about to do next. Hearing that, Arya's face instantly lights up. She blurts out thanks to the commander over and over, practically shouting that out of everyone, she's the most human. Once the plan gets the green light, he pivots straight to the commander, laying out the move. He warns an attack could hit the very next day, so they need to spread the word that Iris has been rushed to his safer location. Owen nods hard, saying that lie should buy them a few precious days. Commander Owen lays down her final orders, and every word tightens the tension. This Sabbath is when the decoy operation decides everything. Until then, she pushes them to get ready right now. Iris's companion snaps back with a fierce, determined yes. He snaps his focus to Iris, and with a steady calm, asks her out on a date. Then the words hit her like a bomb, her cheeks blazing red as she stammers, completely frozen, unable to even process what he just said. She slipped away, promised she'd be back in an hour, and shut the door with purpose. As they walked, Arya fired up the plan. On Sabbath, she said they'd bait the enemy in plain sight, pretending to be two normal kids just hanging out, which meant Iris would have to go on a date with Alta Sensei. The moment the word date hit, Iris jolted hard. Why would they even say that? Arya snapped back that the enemy couldn't know who they were, so they needed to sell it convincingly. Iris spiraled anyway, pushing that it was all just part of the plan, and that Alta's comment was nothing but a joke. Still, she had to clamp down on her nerves, because being new to this kind of thing was freaking her out. Seeing her friends fall apart, Arya shot back with a bold plan. She said it'd be okay to just fake it, and then she turned to Iris, asking what they should do next and handing her the final call. She strode on by herself, swallowed by her own thoughts, chasing the day she'd become a knight strong enough to earn the Sword Saint Princess title, and she'd always told herself she had no time for something as distracting as romance. That's why she'd been clueless about things like this. Between the crushing weight of her duties and this sudden new role, it all slammed down on her, and she just begged in silence for one breath of peace. Right in front of the grand archway, Commander Lamir Owen scoffs at how insane everything is, even as he mutters about going on a date with a high school girl while the tension is still choking the air. With a smug grin, he turns to Alta Schweitz and says, "Don't act like you're so innocent, because you're not." Irritation sparks as he snaps back that everything he's done was for the plan, then presses her, "So were you even watching me earlier?" Alexander lets out a quiet sigh and admits it. She was dependable, but her ego got too loud, and it all led here. Then she tells Alta straight up that Alexander picked the wrong enemy. And just like that, it hits Alta hard. He finally gets it. From the moment the mission started, Alta realizes she'd been setting him up to guard the Sword Saint Princess, Iris Reinfeld, with overprotective precision. Her expression snaps into place as she calls him First Officer Alta Schweitz with full formality, then she pins him with a straight-up question. Can we protect Lady Reinfeld from this organ? He shoots back with total confidence, "Of course I can," and says a leader has to carry himself like it, standing tall and proud, but then he drops the catch. He'll be grabbing an extra 30% of his salary for all the hassle. Her stern mask slips right off, and she beams, admitting she loves this side of him, while Belt Trousseau nearby bursts into laughter and reveals that Iris is Gallo's daughter, the former commander, and that Alta once lived under his watch. He playfully nudges them to go on a date once the mission is done, and Alta blushes hard, sputtering that the age gap is a real problem. Then she fires back, "Aren't you being a little too harsh on him?" Lemar shuts it down fast, pivoting straight to the investigation and who exactly hired the sword gun. She had a rough hunch about who was behind the attacks, but the truth just wouldn't show up in any solid proof, so Alto nodded and said their culprit had to be someone you couldn't risk challenging recklessly. The investigation snapped into place. There was one name blazing at the center of it, Zeal Tillich. She revealed the truth. He was the son of King William Tillich, ruler of their own Galdia kingdom. Wide-eyed, he absorbed the truth and realized the prince of their nation was zeroing in on Iris. And yeah, that name was a big deal. Deep inside the royal castle, beneath towering spires, a tense meeting was already in full swing. Two cloaked figures closed in on a checkpoint, and a palace guard barked for them to stop and rip off their masks, until a second guard stepped in, grabbed his partner by the words, and told him to wait. He bowed to the silent, masked guards and apologized for the rudeness, then leaned toward his partner and made it clear those were the prince's personal guards. They got the go-ahead, and now two figures stood in front of a man lounging in a grand chamber, who looked them over and told them, stone cold, that they should skip coming to see him there if they could manage it. Prince Zeal Tillich kept right on with his report, admitting the sword gang was rumored to slice down anyone for the right price, even the Sword Saint. Yet after two of their own were already wiped out, he didn't so much as flinch, sounding almost entertained that it was only a 12-year-old boy stirring up all this trouble. Rage flared as the prince barked at his guards to shut up, and just as one of them asked where the Sword Saint Princess was, he snapped, screaming that the bastard from the Sirius Black Knights had refused to spill a single scrap of info. Rage still burns in him because of an old humiliation. He remembers how that brat humiliated him during the last tournament, so he snaps a hard order to his guards. The next time they see her, they're done letting the Sword Saint Princess breathe. Her cruel smile twists across his face as he spits out another vicious detail. This isn't just murder. They're here to torture the terror out of her first, to make death feel unbearable, right before they cut her down. He turns his back on his guards, sneering that peace and quiet are torture, and the prince finally bears his ambition. Once she's gone, just like her father, he'll seize the throne and rule over a country packed with power he can unleash. Ambition doesn't stop at one country, it explodes across the whole continent. He vows he'll become the king who rules everything. Then he whips around to his subordinates and snarls that he sent them to guard him, and he expects them to carry out that duty the right way. After their orders hit, the two masked guards went still on the cliff edge, staring down into the sprawling castle grounds below. Elsewhere, two other figures size up the prince. One broad, white-bearded bruiser says he always knew Prince Zeal wasn't king material, but that this flaw is exactly what makes him simple to manipulate, and the long-haired leader next to him nods like he agrees. The leader nods along, and the bearded enforcer leans in to predict one thing. If Prince Zeal grabs the throne, the whole continent is going to erupt in a massive uprising. A wicked grin snaps onto the leader's face as they spin the chaos into a golden opening, turning the continent into their group's perfect, all-out hunting ground. In the cavern, the sword gang's leader faced their companion and admitted the worst. Two men were already gone before the hunting ground was even finished, and it hit harder than expected. They snapped that Azuma's death was a complete waste, and unlike Folt, Azuma had real value. His hulking, white-haired companion snapped those words into the air, then fate pinned him down. He'd have to guard the Sword Saint Princess herself. As he stared at her future, he couldn't shake the tragedy of it all, a fragile girl from a respected old family, doomed to be the king who didn't even bother fighting back. The leader snapped with surprise at how intently her subordinate watched her, and the big man didn't even flinch. He just said there was a solid reason, like it mattered more than she could imagine. The chat got cut off mid-sentence when a fully armored knight burst in, called out the big man by name, Sword Gang's Adelgratz. Beltruso the knight stood at the front of his soldiers and sealed off the two Sword Gang members with an iron-tight ring. No escape, no allies. Then he shouted that he was taking them straight into custody. Adelgrat yanked his massive, curved blade out with a dramatic flourish, and the Sword Gang's leader stayed cool as he told him to team up, free that poor girl together. His face contorted into a savage grin, and he glared at the gathered knights, sneering as if they were unlucky bastards. On the Sabbath day, Altaschwait stands poised, palm braced on the hill, fingers gripping the sword hilt, and just as he's told his destination is locked in, he hears the knights are already waiting beyond the perimeter. Then he nods and says, "I'm ready to go." He stood at the foot of that stone structure, pacing inside his own worry for Iris' safety, because if things went bad, he knew she could handle the Sword Gang on her own, no question. Then a voice boomed from above, apologizing for the delay. Iris's voice cut through the air, and when she stepped out in plain clothes instead of her usual uniform, she admitted it took forever to convince Arya. He straight up asked if something was wrong, then grinned like the sight was a breath of fresh air, telling her the different outfits suited her perfectly. Totally flustered, Iris stammered out her thanks. Right then, Arya Natria slipped in behind Iris in a dark formal uniform, greeted the sensei with a crisp, polite good morning, then snapped her gaze to Iris, determined and ready, saying it was time to go. His eyes locked onto Arya's outfit, tracing her posture and the way that uniform hugged her just right, like he instantly clocked that a weapon was hidden somewhere beneath it. As the three started walking, Arya snapped in frustration, furious that she'd been dragged along after she'd been told her job was just logistics. Alta shot back that he owned nothing but his knight's armor and his robe. Iris, though, was thrilled. She grinned that it was all okay, then proudly dubbed it a three-person date. Iris's quip made him snicker, likening himself to someone clutching flowers with both hands, but Arya Moore's patience snapped. She burst out at her sensei in full protest. Iris's face instantly turned grim, and she cut in hard. If Arya couldn't tag along, then she wouldn't either. The fun fizzled out the second his face hardened. He shot up a single finger and shut them down instantly. With a sharp warning to both girls, he told them not to play it too safe, because everything had changed, and now a single attack could actually get them killed. His words just hung there, heavy as a threat, while Iris looked shaken that he could say something that grim with a straight face. Arya, though, she didn't flinch. She met the warning head-on and gave a firm, okay. As they got ready to leave, Iris snapped to Arya with a face full of worry. Run the second things get dangerous. But Arya didn't budge, claiming she was the Sword Gang's target, and she'd rather stand her ground than retreat at the first sign of trouble. Her face tightened as she hissed a grim vow under her breath, swearing she'd slaughter every last person hunting Iris. Arya's muttering snagged Iris' attention, and Iris demanded what she'd said, yet Arya brushed it off as nothing, so Iris wheeled her worry toward Alta, warning him to stay sharp and be careful too. Her words hit him like a punch, and in that instant he snapped to the truth. He hadn't felt anyone genuinely worry about him in ages. He steadied himself, mapped out the next move, and since their destination was locked in, he pushed for a detour, just to snag their enemy's attention, then turned to the girls and asked where they'd want to go. When Iris heard the idea, her face lit up instantly, and she practically bounced, asking if she could go grab some new clothes, while everyone readily agreed. Then he spun toward Arya and demanded, "Do you know any stores?" Arya nodded hard. She already had places in mind and promised to lead the way. Once they locked in their destination, the trio charged straight into a roaring city street packed with merchants and shoppers, because the plan to smash the Sword Gang and take them down had officially kicked off. The trio rolls up to a packed, closed shop, and that bright-lit entrance cuts through the evening streets like a spotlight. Iris and Arya waste no time. Right there, they lift a frilly white shirt up to a tired-looking altar, and Iris jokes that it looks perfect on him and even comes in other colors, while Arya leans in and quietly suggests a different color might hit even better. Arya blurts out, shocked, "Sensei," and Iris snaps back fast. It's only a nickname for Altica, but Arya turns to him for proof, and he looks like he's about to argue, grumbling that they were only there to buy clothes. She scoots in close, sweet smile on her face as she says she heard he's got nothing on but his robes, and then she tilts her head like, "So, do you mind if I pick out something for you?" She doesn't wait for a single answer. she just flashes confidence and tells him he can hand it over to her, then promises she'll choose clothes for Arya too. Alta can only surrender with a defeated nod. They stiffen right between the two girls as they burst into giggles, clearly struggling to play along with their plans. The deal keeps rolling as Arya swings in a frilly black dress with a hood packed with cat ears, then straight up asks what he thinks, so he can only blurt the obvious, wondering if that outfit is secretly meant for girls. He turns away from Arya's idea and locks eyes on Iris, who's already holding up a tougher military-style uniform, and he instantly thinks, yeah, that fits her, praising it as the right call. Iris snaps back that he didn't even look close enough, while Arya, in the background, pouts like her suggestion just got thrown out. With a shy blush, she says she's heading to the counter to pay, and Alta, clutching his own picks, tells her he's genuinely thrilled with every outfit she picked for him, convinced that this will be more than enough. She watches him fade into the distance, and it hits her. This new outfit finally makes her look like a normal 15-year-old girl. Meanwhile, he can't stop thinking about how her classmates are going to be blown away seeing her like this. As he steps outside the shop, Iris and Arya are waiting, and his mind shoots back to the day he first met them. One noble girl wearing seriousness like armor, the other acting carefree like nothing can touch her. He can't help but admit it. Both of them have come a long, long way since then. He turns to him and demands where Iris is, then points back toward the store to tell him she's still behind the counter. Her eyes lock onto him as she demands to know if he even cares about Iris. Alta shoots back a crisp, formal reply. As a knight, he's sworn to protect the very one he's escorting. He snaps down on his explanation right away, insisting that's not what she means at all, so confusion hits him, and he tries again, blaming his role as her mentor, but Arya shuts him down again, her face turning stone cold. With fierce determination blazing in her eyes, Arya declares she protects Iris just because it's her, period, and that's the real gap between her and Alta. She explains that Iris is determined to protect everyone, Arya, Alta, and the rest too, and it's that stubborn willingness to throw herself on the line that hits hardest. With a hurt, aching face, Arya finally admits it, because the thought of what might happen is worrying her sick. She snaps her point into place. This is exactly why she's going to protect Iris, and then she pleads with Alta, her teacher, to do the same and focus on keeping Iris safe. Right then, Iris bursts out of the shop, calling out that she's done, then Alta immediately thanks her for the patience. While the two girls stride ahead, Iris is grinning and gushing that she loved the outing. Meanwhile, he can't stop muttering about Arya's words, and the demand to keep her safe feels impossible for him to swallow. He gets exactly what she's hinting at, danger or not. Arya can't be the priority right now. Iris has to be. And it hits him like a punch of regret, because he realizes it was rude to assume she was anything less than smart. Even if Arya never says it out loud, he knows his orders are carved in stone, he's Iris's guard, and if Arya ever turns into a hostage situation, he doesn't hesitate. Iris lives first and always. The crew barrels into a field of ancient, crumbling ruins. While Arya skips playfully across busted pillars, Iris blurts that it's her first time here, and Alta shoots back that he's already done time on this exact site. He lays out why he came back before, and his face tightens as he says it. This place is a safe haven for outlaws. A sudden jolt hits him, something off. He'd been weirded out that his sword gang hadn't struck in town, but now it clicks. He can't pinpoint anyone's presence, yet he still feels it, like eyes drilling into them from the shadows. They're not just being watched, they've been pulled straight into a trap. He clocks Iris's nerves and fires back, asking if she's scared. She swallows hard and admits she is. His face tightens with pure resolve, and he realizes this is the perfect spot to hit the sword gang, because their attack is about to explode. Meanwhile, Arya spirals in pure fear, convinced she brought her friends into a death trap and terrified they won't make it through what's coming. Then it hits him hard. He and Arya have faced life-or-death chaos before, but this is Iris's very first real fight where the stakes are survival. Right when it feels like he's thinking it, Iris whips her gaze to him with pure desperation and begs, how can she become as strong as he is? She blurts out that she wants to declare herself the Sword Saint Princess, the one the gang can't stand against, but she admits she just can't find the conviction to do it. He tells her straight to her face that she's already strong, and then he points out the truth. She could have done nothing and let the order handle it, but she didn't. She chose to fight. His words hit her like a thunderclap, leaving her frozen in shock. Then he keeps going, saying there's a huge difference between recklessness and courage, and insisting that the path she chose is pure courage. With a calm, reassuring smile, he tells her, if you think this is a bad idea, just hand it to me. I've got you, because that's exactly why he's here. Relief crashes over Iris like a wave, and she grins so bright it could light up the room. She thanks him wholeheartedly, then rushes to apologize for the weakness that slipped out. She turns her back on Alto and snaps, "I'm fine now." He stares, wondering if she's really about to take this on alone, and a sudden hit of doubt slithers in, making him question whether he actually doesn't trust her skills. His eyes snap away and he sweeps the shattered courtyard. Arya's gone. Panic creeps in as he wonders if she's already slipped off, hiding her presence from him. Iris spots the empty space and blurts Arya's name, confused and unsettled. He immediately gets what's going on. Arya spots him first, eyes locked with grim determination, and she decides she'll only focus on one thing, protecting Iris. From her hidden spot behind the crumbling pillar, she watches Iris and admits, yeah, she could pull it off, but the nerves are still there. Meanwhile, Alta pushes Iris to split up and hunt the enemy, insisting it's the smartest move for her, but Iris shuts that down fast, swearing she always knows where he is, so he doesn't need to stress. He challenges her decision, arguing the enemies are probably exactly where Arya is, and Iris shoots back with a bright, confident grin, no hesitation, no doubt. Minutes ago, Fismiden, the Kinkakushu's leader, watched the students from a towering perch, and he clocked their plan instantly. They were trying to bait them into a trap. Standing there beside the towering Edelgrats, they went face-to-face with the impossible. Surprise hit hard, because they'd expected kids scrambling to hide and run, but there was already a fully set battlefield waiting for them, and Fist clocked it instantly. That Sword Saint Princess looked completely unarmed. Edelgratz, the Kinkakushu enforcer, flashes a sharp, tooth-bearing grin, sizes the students up, and snarls that he'll take them on himself, right when it looks like they're begging for it. In the ruins somewhere else, Alta stands beside the Kinkakusha leader, Fismiden, and he scans the wreckage-strewn ground, firing off a question, where has the other one gone? Fismiden snaps around with sudden, liquid speed, their long, light hair whipping through the air as they lunge at an unseen threat. A storm of daggers tears through the air. Fismeden intercepts them in a flash, and each blade gets brutally turned aside by a razor-sharp metallic lens. Arya Natria struck from afar, standing still like she'd already won. Her attack got effortlessly blocked, and from up on the ruin wall, Alta watched the whole clash unfold. As the daggers crash down, Edelgrat charges in, straight fists first, and blurts that he'd been dying to know why they were tangled up with the Sword Saint Princess during the youngest night. He admits he never once expected they'd try to outdo the Kinkakushi. Her first strike cuts Arya's momentum, and before her face can settle, she barks that they're the mercenaries. Then she leans in and demands what they did with Iris. From his high perch, Alta stares down at the two Kankukusha leaders, clocking that they're the only ones in sight. Then he booms, "If I wipe you both out right here, the whole conflict ends, am I right?" This meeting whips everyone's focus to the girl with twin pigtails, and they demand to know who she is before snapping into hard questions at Edelgrad's for getting impressed at a moment this critical. Big Enforcer just grunts, laughing it off as he praises their unseen enemies for having top-notch recon. Down below, Arya clenches her knives until her knuckles ache, her face set like stone and her resolve blazing. Dark, feathery energy bursts from Arya's back, snaps into a cape, and her plain knives twist into ornate, hooked blades. From where he's standing, Alta blurts her name, warning her, and Iris stares, worried and tense. The Kinkakusha leaders go still, and one of them calls her out with one cold word, assassin. Arya's face turns to raw shock, like she's watching power she can't control take over. Rain hammers the dark rooftops like it's trying to erase the night, and then, snap, one crystal memory flashes back like it happened yesterday, drowned under the non-stop, gloomy roar of the storm. In that brutal downpour, a tiny, shivering girl with pale hair huddles against the stone wall, all alone and soaked through to the bone, while people with umbrellas drift past her without even a single glance. Solitude gets shattered by a soft, gentle voice. There, under a bright yellow umbrella, Iris Reenful steps close with a worried look, asking the shivering child what she's doing here and whether she's all right. She lifts her gaze, those red eyes locking onto Iris's warm kindness, and when Iris smiles and asks her name, the girl hesitates, then softly admits, "My name is Natria." The scene snaps into the present. Arya Natria stands ready, staring down two Kankakushu members, while their leader, Fismeden, smirks and drips disdain at her nerve for calling them an assassin. This meeting's fun evaporates overnight. Now it's all cold resolve. They call Arya a danger that must be left behind, then slap a death sentence on her, and Arya's eyes fly open with pure terror at the instant they mean to kill her. Without warning, fists slam forward in brutal lunges, bodies flashing like a blur of steel. Arya twists backward at the last second, narrowly dodging a devastating hit that blasts apart the stone ruins where she'd been standing moments ago. She whips through the air, barely dodging invisible blows that smash the stone floor to pieces, and the Kinkakushu leader just watches, calm as ever, praising her razor-sharp instincts. The weird thing about the attack wasn't totally new. Once Iris Ryan got slammed into a disorienting tumble, she remembered what she'd heard about these foes, her sword, just like the rumors promised. Amid the wreckage, the leader stood unshaken, gripping the very source of the attack, the thread blade. Another barrage of unseen strikes tore forward. Arya couldn't see a thing, but she felt every deadly slice in the air like it was hunting her. Iris watched her friend decide to fight back, then sling a tiny blade straight at the enemy. Only Iris knew it was hopeless, because throwing something like that at them was pointless. Harris was right all along. King Kakashu's leader just lifted a hand and tore open the air with a swirling vortex of shadows, flashing real spatial magic. The thrown knife got yanked straight into the dark void in a blink, gone without a trace. Arya froze in shock, and right then a thick, steel-hard blade burst into existence in the leader's grip, snapping forward like it meant to end everything. The leader watches stone calm, as he says that striking from a blind spot at that speed is useless against their spatial magic. Then Arya freezes in disbelief, unable to process how effortlessly her opponent slipped out of it. She refuses to back down, then snaps loose a barrage of daggers, demanding if this fresh attack can even be stopped, and her opponent just stands there, calm, as dozens of dark, swirling vortexes start spinning into existence in the air around them. The vortexes snap shut the moment the blades enter, gulping them down instantly and killing the entire attack. She pants hard, sweat pouring down her brow as the brutal truth hits. She can't do a damn thing. Her opponent, totally unscathed, leans in and sneers, asking if she's done with her attack, and with a rapid string of sharp clicks, the stolen daggers snap back into place, stuck in the dirt all around their leader like they're suddenly worth nothing. As the one-sided fight rages on, Alter's eyes flick back to Iris's weird behavior from earlier today, then realization hits like a hammer, and his face turns cold. He has to end this foe. Meanwhile, Arya swallows the fear, clenches her jaw at her opponent's brutal strength, and keeps her resolve locked in. Her grit burns hotter with every precious memory, the smiling face of Iris Reenful, and it drives her to fight like never before for the girl who took her in, treated her like family, and even handed her the name she still carries. Just as she steels herself, a fresh nightmare lunges from the shadows behind her. Enforcer Aethelgratz lifts his hulking blade, ready to slice her down from behind. The Enforcer slammed his massive blade down with zero patience, and just as he finished speaking, an attack surged in from behind, smashing into Arya and stealing her breath before she could even react. She immediately realized there was zero escape. This ambush hit with brutal speed and raw power, crushing all her chances to dodge. But right before that deadly blow could land, a flash of shining steel cut through the air, intercepting the Enforcer's massive weapon, while Iris Reenfell stepped in, sword up, holding her ground against the unstoppable assault. The Enforcer grunted as his charge died midstream, because Iris stood her ground, and their swords slammed together. Iris's focus snapped to her friend sprawled on the ground, and with worry in her voice, she stared back at Arya and demanded why she kept throwing herself into danger like it was nothing. She snapped her eyes back to the enemy, rage sharpened in her stare. She apologized to Arya for the scare, then promised her everything was finally under control. Two fighters squared off in a nail-biting standoff, while the Enforcer's vicious grin crashed against Iris' unshakable, rock-solid stare. She glanced at Ari beside her, relief and frustration twisting together, because this was just Iris doing her classic reckless hero routine. Then she sensed that familiar presence rolling in again, and sure enough, their teacher was heading their way too. In a nearby clearing, Enforcer Adelgredz faces his boss, Fismeden, and makes his move. He's taking the threat on himself, and he orders Fisbaden to deal with Alta Schweitz. He shoots Fis a stern warning and says he doesn't need any extra help at all. Fis doesn't even flinch. They just shut their eyes and whisper a calm good luck with. Plan locked in, Adelgratz rockets back into the chaos. While Iris yells for Arya, the huge Enforcer swings his curved blade like a wrecking ball, smashing down in a furious blur straight toward his mark. The strike gets stopped cold, but before the panic can settle, a voice slices through. Alta, right nearby, barks for his partner to fall back and regroup. Then a darker, deeper voice cuts in and speaks straight to the sword's Saint Princess. It's been a long time, Iris Reenfell. Iris's eyes flare wide as recognition hits like lightning. Adelgrat's voice crackles as he steps right in front of a bewildered Arya Natria, and all she can manage is a confused little sound while she stares up at his towering presence. Her confusion collapses into pure dread the second she finally recognizes his voice, because the memory of him crashing into her world sends a vicious chill straight down her spine. The Enforcer blatantly ignores Arya, locks his eyes on Iris alone, and fires off a sharp remark about her new title, the Saint Sword Princess, then hits her with one brutal question: "Did you really beat your father?" His words hit like a slap, hard. Iris's composure cracks instantly, her face freezing into pure shock as that brutal memory crashes back, steel shrieking on steel and the crushing impact of his attack. While Iris stood frozen in shock, dark energy burst from Arya instead, right out of nowhere. Her face snapped from stun to blazing fury as a jagged, crackling sigil slammed into existence in front of her. Eyes blazing with rage and disbelief, she stared Adelgratz down and hissed the accusation like it burned her throat. He was the one who murdered her father. In a forest clearing, the showdown with the Kinkakushu enforcer explodes into pure chaos. Everything hits a breaking point. Iris Ryan Fell, the Saint Sword Princess, starts radiating a brutal aura, while her friend Arya crouches right beside her, screaming for her to calm down. In the end, it's all for nothing. Arya stares with wide, stunned eyes, and the moment Iris realizes it won't work, she gets yanked into fury. Energy snaps through her as her face hardens into pure rage. She glares at the massive warrior, declares she'll avenge her father, then forces out a grin, because that power of hers is seriously impressive, and ends by saying he'll get plenty of entertainment. Right after his taunt, dark energy explodes out of her like a storm, whipping and swirling around her tiny body. Arya can only scream her name in pure panic. With one controlled blast of power, Iris gets ripped backward through the trees, screaming in pain, and Alta Schweitz watches from afar with laser-focused intensity. She spots Iris crumpled on the ground, the fury finally cooling off, and Arya rushes in with worried eyes as Iris turns her head, her face softens, and she manages to call out for her teacher, Schweitzensei. Then she whips around to her friend, apologizes to Arya for flipping out, and swears she's completely fine now. She snapped back into control, squared up to the enforcer again, and said, straight-faced, that she wasn't trying to entertain him at all. The big guy looked genuinely let down, wiped his mouth, and muttered that she was just getting boring. Fury burns in its eyes as the young boy in the cloak shouts the Kinkakushu leader's name, and from far away, Fist calmly answers him. A chilling acknowledgement booms from behind a gigantic, shimmering energy grid, an instant thread barrier snapping into place and trapping the students on one side while their pursuers slam up against the other. It stands tall before the blazing lattice, claiming this is a barrier nobody's ever breached, one touch, and they're dead for good. Then they locked onto the boy who was scoffing, like a measly wall of threads could actually stop them. Across the clearing, Adelgrat snaps his focus onto Iris and Arya, cursing the fact that he had to hand off the boy he was itching to fight, and now he orders the two girls to entertain him for a minute. Iris snaps her sword awake, purple lightning whips around the blade, then swears on it, the very sword her father, Gallo Reinful, left her, and the enforcer's eyes widen as recognition hits. With her resolve turning ironhard, she declares, I'm the Saint Sword Princess, and I'll be the one to defeat you. The massive warrior smirks, takes her challenge like it's nothing, and waves her on. Huddled by the barrier, Fist stares as the confrontation kicks off, a cruel grin curling on their lips. Then they murmur to the boy beside them that those two girls are about to die. With his sword cocked and ready, the protagonist shouts across to the distant Kinkakushu leader, declaring he'll crush her, and then he cuts Iris loose, saying she's already declared herself the Saint Sword Princess, so let her take her own fight. From behind the barrier, Iris flushes with embarrassment and blurts that he doesn't have to call her that. His words slice through the silence, and a shadowy figure shoots back a chilling retort, calling him a heartless child. Her voice drops with disappointment, like she'd truly expected him to break down more over what's happening, but for now, that's all. She steps into the light and boom, her real form shows up. A terrifying warrior with long white hair, dark skin, and ornate battle armor. Then she declares, I'm Fismidden from the Sword Gang, and kicks off the death match like it's about to go down. Without a single word, she explodes into a barrage of vicious slashes, shredding the air as they streak straight for him across the gap. He stares down the incoming assault, eyes locked and sharp, ready to watch what she does and dissect the truth behind her power. In the blink of an eye, the attack slams into him, an unseeable storm of blades that rips the earth right where he stands. As the invisible assault keeps pounding him, he jolts with a realization. Fist isn't using a sword at all. She doesn't need one to defend or strike. Right as he braces for the onslaught, a faint glow ignites at his fingertip, like his power is about to break loose. She surges through the storm of unseen strikes, and the ground explodes right where he was standing a heartbeat ago. Fismidden rockets in with blinding speed, her form streaking as she hammers the attack home. Her relentless attack comes to a stop with a little chuckle, and she smirks, asking if he's really praising her like, calling her a good girl. He stares at her with total focus, completely blown away, because the way she reacts is so unreal it feels like she's reading the future. He sharpens his analysis in a blink, because this isn't just precognition, it's her abilities on a whole different tier, a sixth sense so far beyond the average person that it might as well be light years away. His eyes narrow as the truth clicks into place. He realizes her supernatural awareness has a fatal flaw. She can't see a single thing. Sensing something, she shoots him a look and confirms he's finally clocked it. Fismeden drops the bombshell that she once was revered as a saintess, then was tortured until blindness took her, and now Iris has to carry the Saint Sword Princess title, and she makes it sound brutally hard for a girl like that. She then vows she'll rip Iris out of that role, and he snaps back instantly, firing a question. So by freedom, do you mean killing her? A pained smile flickers across her face, and she wonders, maybe one day the world stops bleeding, but only if they keep freeing those who still want to fight, one by one. His face hardens into steel-cold certainty, and he tells her, just like he figured, her whole group is crooked, no doubts left in his mind. Then he straight up declares he's going to kill her, and that girl too. He snaps into action at once, dodging through a downpour of dark, razor-sharp projectiles blasting up from the ground, just barely keeping them from skewering him. The assault grinds to a halt, and dust and rubble swirl through the air as the broken courtyard finally goes still. From the thick haze, Fismedon bursts out in awe, gaping at him with pure surprise. That's unbelievable, the way you wipe your presence completely. That's brilliant. He sweeps his senses across the area, and just like that, he realizes he's moving without even breathing, an insane display of control. As her sixth sense paints the world around her, she can't help getting hooked, because he's giving off zero killing intent. She admits she's genuinely blown away, because while that girl before could hide in plain sight, the truth is, this guy is even better. Right in the middle of his thoughts, he surges forward and lands right in front of her, so close it leaves her reeling. Then she snaps, "Who are you?" He still won't answer, because his mind is locked on one rule, and right now it's all about speed. He lashes out with blinding speed. His blade flashes past, slamming into her guard before her fists can even settle, and she snarls as her body whips with the impact, shocked that it hits faster than her precognition can keep up. The blade bites deep, and blood bursts from a gash on her shoulder, yet Fismedon snaps out a sharp, pained laugh as he stands there with a calm, placid face, claiming he's nothing but a simple knife. She staggers back from the impact, crumpling onto the stone floor and clutching her wound, then snaps her head up with a defiant smirk, taunting him like he almost had the kill. From the ground, she fires back, then a massive, shadow-thick hand erupts and slams across the chamber, going straight for him. He braces hard, clenching his sword in both hands, and a terrifying thought hits him. If he treats this strike like real, his blade won't make it out alive. He barrels forward without hesitation and drives his sword straight into the heart of that shadowy construct. Dark power explodes around his blade as he keeps pushing ahead. Power hits Fismedon like a wrecking ball. She coughs up blood, eyes wide, mind spinning, stunned that he's just a kid and still packs strength that's way too overwhelming. She craned her eyes up at the boy looming over her, and as the debris settled, sudden realization hit. He wasn't a knight at all, he was the crooked one. He stands rock solid, fingers gripping his sword's hilt while blood drips off his cheek, and as the defeated enemy spins around and bolts into the forest, each sharp footstep snaps through the silence. He doesn't move, just stares them down with a steady, quiet resolve, until one thought cuts clean through the wreckage of the fight. Only one remains. With a guttural grunt, the hulking Kinkakushu enforcer plants his feet as his massive weapon collides with a blazing, crackling blade, sparks exploding everywhere. From across the distance, the protagonist clocks the weapon instantly, purple lightning, the very sword Gallo Renful once wielded. He remembers what makes it deadly. It was forged from an ore that sparks brutal electroshocks, and only someone with the nerve to endure that current can even touch it. Iris Renfell knows the electricity isn't just for show. It supercharges the user's body, turning pain into power, and on the battlefield she stands unshaken, letting the sword's energy surge through her while she squares off against that massive enemy with Arya right beside her. She lunged ahead, her blade snapping into a brilliant energy arc as it slammed into the enforcer's weapon with brutal, unstoppable force. Sudden ferocity slams into him, and surprise flashes across his face, yet Iris stays locked in on the fight, laser-focused. Arya slips right into the chaos, then she and the others slam forward as one, swords flashing in a tight, rapid-fire storm that batters the Enforcer's defenses, right here. With their strikes still landing, the Enforcer's grin blooms. He praises how perfectly they move together, but Iris just locks eyes with him, icy and unshakable. She and Arya lunge forward with a roar on their lips, right as the massive Enforcer hammers his heavy blade down to cut them off. That hit ripped through the air like a thunderclap, cracking the ground under their feet. Arya snapped into a parry to block the strike, while Iris powered up her own electrified attack. As the dust finally drifted away, the Enforcer stayed upright, wheezing on broken ground, and Iris froze, because their 1-minute window was already gone. He stared at her, and the air crackled around her sword as he said he still missed the lightning-clad girl he'd once known. Then he compared her to her father. Iris's eyes shot wide as she confronted him and demanded the truth. Was he really sent to kill her father? He flatly denied the accusation, saying her father was just in his way, because his real interest was the man everyone called the strongest in the Galdia kingdom. When she heard that, Iris instantly clocked what mattered. She sized up his power, realizing his swings hit like a truck, but they weren't unbeatable, and she was ready to fight him with. With fresh grit in her chest, she called out to Arya and pushed the plan. Let's hit them together. Arya locked eyes with her, and that hard look turned into a silent, ready yes. Their opponent barely hid a smirk. He even admitted their performance was better than he'd expected, then dared them to hold on and survive for one more minute. His opponent slammed his foot down, the ground splitting as raw power surged out of him like a shockwave. He declared it was finally his turn, and Iris and Arya braced hard as the enforcer's crushing pressure slammed into them. Launched forward with incredible speed, right at them, and Iris shot in to stop it, yelling for Arya to get behind her as she slammed her own blade against his massive swing. She fought back with everything she had, jaw clenched as his brutal strength pinned her down, while the enforcer sneered that she couldn't even last 10 seconds. He abruptly broke off, tore past her in a blur, his real target finally exposed, and Iris gasped in panic as she cried out the area's name. As he came charging at her, Arya dug in her heels, eyes locked, jaw set, swearing she wouldn't let him get past. She slammed straight into his charge, and boom, a brilliant flash detonated between them, so hard it staggered even a massive enforcer. Arya flew backward, coughing blood as her defense finally cracked. Her body slammed into the ground, and Iris's breath caught, screaming her friend's name as Arya lay battered and broken, while a spiderweb of cracks hung in the air where that barrier used to be. She plants her feet and grips her sword tight, ready to strike. Then the Kinkakushu enforcer looks her dead in the eye, calls her the Sword Saint Princess, and says they've finally come face to face. Watching him closely, she feels the darkness in his magical power. He's turning it into transmutation and then detonating it, over and over. This is pure evil, she thinks, and she knows dodging won't save her. But if she can lock onto defense and drag the fight out, she might actually have a shot. Right as she's about to lock in her plan, he snaps into action. Dark energy surges through him, and the enforcer blasts across the ground in a blur, smashing the distance fast. Arya, stuck on the ground, instantly realizes with terror that he's charging straight for Iris. No time to dodge, so she clenches her jaw and decides to face it head-on, planting her feet and lifting her sword as the enforcer's massive energy-charged blade crashes down onto hers. The clash detonates with a brutal burst of dark power, tossing debris into the air as Iris grits her teeth and fights against the crushing impact, her smaller frame getting swallowed by the sheer scale of it all. She refuses to break, her blade sings with a blazing glow, shoving back the crawling dark, while her face tightens into a fierce mask of sheer fear and focus. The storm of energy finally dies down. Ino's knees hit the ground as she gasps for air, but she held her ground and didn't break. The enforcer watches her, and when he says she took the hit cleanly, you can hear the faintest flicker of approval. He then scoffs, basically saying that's exactly why he thinks both her and her father are so stupid, always throwing themselves into the line of fire just to protect other people, no matter what it costs them. She let out a quiet, mocking chuckle, completely unfazed by her own stubborn resolve, staying locked in her defensive stance while the heavy breaths kept coming. Her expression turned stone cold, eyes blazing with pure conviction even with cuts and sweat streaking her face. Then she slammed the truth down. If her moves matched her father's, then she hadn't done a single thing wrong. He brushed off her words as pure nonsense. Then the enforcer sneered that he didn't need to hear her logic at all. Just go, he ordered, and face the same fate as your father. She felt her strength draining fast, like she might not survive the next blow she'd been facing, and still, there was no turning back. Electricity snapped to life around her blade again, crackling and sparking like it was roaring for war. With her sword blazing, she screamed, daring him to come at her, so the enforcer exploded forward, his huge blade lifting to smash into him. Two warriors slammed into each other with a brutal burst of force, and their blades crashed together at blinding speed. Steel shrieked on steel, and the brutal impact blasted shock waves through the air. Their blades slammed together, enforcers straining with every ounce of strength, while Iris clenched down hard, fighting tooth and nail to keep his overwhelming power from breaking through. Her strength crumbled, and the enforcer's brutal power shoved her back hard, while Justice's guard teetered on the edge of breaking. Then a dark-clad figure streaked in, snapped a massive blade aside with a savage clang of steel, and the enforcer could only freeze in stunned shock, barely catching up. The newcomer dug in his heels, stepping up like a human wall in front of the battered Iris, then yanked his sword free and took his place as the next shield against their foe. He shot a glance over his shoulder, blood streaked his cheek, and murmured an apology for showing up late, while Iris, right behind him, looked up with pure relief as she recognized him, Shuei-sensei. Relief tears poured into her eyes as she stared at her protector, and she smiled through it, telling him, "It's okay." His gaze hardened as he stared down the enforcer again, and when the old warrior met his eyes, it hit like a punch. If Alta was here, Fis was dead. The enforcer realized he was the final one left standing. Then, out in the wreckage, Altus didn't argue at all, just dropped one word to seal it. On a battlefield still bruised from the last fight, the ruthless Kinkakushu enforcer, Adelgratz, squares off against the young Alta, while the earth between them rips open like it can't handle their power, and behind them the students Alta came to save lie scattered, catching their breath. It snaps his focus to the fallen Arya, and even with blood streaking his cheek, a small smile lights up his face. Then he praises the unconscious girl, telling her she did great and gave everything to protect Iris. With his praise hanging in the air, Iris snaps her head over her shoulder, her face streaked with dirt, her eyes burning with exhaustion, muttering to herself that Arya really was trustworthy, and Alta jumps in, calling her dependable and proving it. Asked about Arya's condition, Iris cradled her and said she was okay, just out cold, then immediately choked out an apology, admitting she was meant to handle it, but Alta snapped it away, insisting she did great too by keeping Arya safe and making it through the ordeal alive. His expression turns iron, his eyes lock in, and he stares his opponent down, then tells Iris to step back and let him handle the rest. Iris drops to her knees with a bow of shame, confident words turning into a confession. She failed again. She curses the moment, saying if her sensei hadn't shown up, she'd be done for, a total disaster, for someone who calls herself the Sword Saint Princess. She wrestles with that crushing feeling of not being enough, while Alta just stands there, silent, back turned to her, staring at the wreckage in front of them. He whirls back to face the kneeling Iris, promises her he'll keep his word, and admits, right from the start, that he once believed becoming a teacher or a sword master was never meant to be his path. He declared his goal on the spot, swearing he'd de-crush that one man no matter the cost, and with his sword held out, he boldly announced himself as the strongest knight in all the land. Then he laid out the catch of his words to the Sword Saint Princess. If he stayed her knight, she'd never be able to reach her dream of becoming the strongest in the whole country. He kept talking because that was the whole reason she needed him. One day, she'd finally grasp what it truly meant to be the strongest Sword Saint Princess, but right now, the only shield she had was him, so he urged her to trust that promise and rely on it. Her eyes went wide as she stared up at him, her face still streaked from the fight. She could barely choke out his name. A sudden thought snapped into her mind. Since her father died, she'd sworn she couldn't count on anyone else, not her mother, not even Arya. But if she could finally let her feelings out, she wanted that moment to keep burning, staying with her forever. Tears ran down her cheeks as she finally begged out loud, "Sensei, please save us." He flashed her a soft smile and laid a reassuring hand on her head, then promised, "Of course, I'm your guard and your instructor." Adelgratz, the huge enforcer, stared at the boy's perfect stance and nodded. Then Adele barked at him to lift his sword, only for Altus to cut in and demand, "Did you keep me waiting?" He insisted he wasn't trying to show off, flashing the truth that Adele could have struck at any moment. Then the enforcer smirked, openly buzzing with excitement for the fight ahead. With a tired look on his face, he muttered that they were all a bunch of demented battle maniacs, and Adele's grin only grew wider as he announced he couldn't wait to take on the one knight everyone called the strongest. The enforcer exploded forward at blinding speed, roaring that this raw fury was the heart of the sword gang, and Alta snapped into a guarded stance as he felt the massive magical power surging behind that charge. Then it unleashed a wild storm of strikes, his sword saint technique, but right when the blade came crashing down, Alta stayed cool and said, "I've already seen this." The enforcer stormed in with total confidence, but then the defense that met him blindsided everyone, his brutal hits getting shoved aside as he choked out a grunt of effort and shock. I watched the wild aftermath of that parry, and my gut told me a head-on clash between them really was a death wish. Adele got slammed back by the counter's full force, reeling through the air. The enforcer got trapped in a spiraling vortex of his own deflected power, while Alta stood firm with his hand out like he'd planned the whole counter in advance. He got slammed by his own deflected power, drowned in every blast and grunt, yet he snarled, roared, and fought back with pure defiance, refusing to be underestimated. His defiance gets ripped apart by a blinding flash as the magical energy detonates, swallowing him whole in an instant. The blast roars and pounds through the chamber, shaking everything in its wake. Then Iris, eyes full of worry, shouts her teacher's name as Adele crawls out of the smoke, seething with rage. Alta snaps into action, clocking the danger. If that blue shell sword's effect slips through, it can wipe out the magical blast. So he makes a hard call. His only move is to smash the nearby wall. He doesn't even blink. He wheels around and rockets straight for the stone barrier, sword up and ready, while the still dazed Adel can only stare as he's gone. Iris screams his name in panic, and Altiz just smashes through the stone wall with a brutal strike, blasting them away out into the darkness waiting beyond. He rams through the brand new gap and drops into the black void below, while rubble crashes down around him in a roaring storm. He lands like a ghost in a wide stone channel and instantly clocks this. Under the city, the waterways. He lets out a huge breath, thanking fate it wasn't the sewers. He slammed onto a stone platform in the pitch-black underground waterway, and the wreckage from his escape came crashing down all around him. His gaze snapped around, like he was searching for a way out of the suffocating darkness of the subterranean cavern. Sword poised at his side, he let out a grim, satisfied breath. No one was going to cut in on this. From the shadows, a voice cut through the dark and called him out straight, blaming him for wiping out the sword gang the speaker had set in motion. From the shadows, towering Adelgratz stepped out, declaring his assignment could wait, because all he wanted was one thing, to clash with Ulta. A towering warrior loomed over Ulta, crushing the air with his sheer presence, and then it hit like lightning. This guy was exactly like Ulta had been in his past lives. His thoughts slammed back to that past life, when he stood above all as the unmatched saint, reliving the endless daily fights, the brutal climb to a lonely peak, and how in the end he found no opponent stronger than himself. All he wanted was to get stronger, but chasing that dream left him empty-handed, and when there was nothing left to fight for, he just shut down and stopped. He swore he'd start this new life the easy way, grab some quick cash, and finally break free from that endless spiral of combat. But now everything shifted. He couldn't stop asking himself how far Iris would push, how much she'd grow, and he wanted front-row proof of it all, and if his opponent tried to stop him, then he would fight, sword raised and eyes locked on the warrior ahead, a fierce resolve snapping into place inside him, because the man he'd become now had a reason to swing. With a ground-shaking crash, a hulking figure slams down in the rubble, Adelgrat of the Sword Gang. The muscular man, all white hair and beard against his dark getup, strides forward and glares at the small boy, Alta Schweitz, vowing to tear him apart with every ounce of his power. Threat by threat, the boy lifts his gaze, steady, unshaken, and once he realizes he's standing alone with no one watching, he swallows his fear and takes the challenge head-on, vowing he'll match the man's words with his own intent. Calm defiance hits like lightning, startling enough to make Adelgratz jerk back, grunting in shock. The boy doesn't move. He plants his feet, sword up and ready, showing his resolve without a single word. He thrusts his power forward, shouting the words instant summoning, and a blinding flash erupts, then a magnificent longsword tears into existence from thin air. The weapon pops into view out of nowhere, and Adel's whole focus snaps to it. He freezes, eyes locked on that silver blade as it hangs in the air, shining like a warning. Gripping the hilt of his summoned blade, he watches its glow flare across his face, then declares its name, Mystic Silver, the very sword that once belonged to the Sword Saint, Raoul Issau. The moment he's named Sword Saint, Adel feels a jolt rip through him, because now he's watching the boy grip that legendary weapon, and the whole room seems to tense with what it could mean. Adel's eyes darken with suspicion, and he snaps that if that really is the Sword Saint's blade, then why the heck does the kid even have it? So Alta stays calm and says, straight up, it's his sword, and that answer lights Adel's rage on fire as he snarls, demanding to know what the boy has done. With the enforcer's fury roaring at him, Alta Schweitz lifts her glowing mystic silver blade and shouts that since she swore she'd win, she'll swing with everything she's got, claiming the Sword Saint title as her own. He jabs the sword straight at his opponent, and a thin line of blood slips down his lip. His gaze locks in, and he spits out a challenge. Adelgrath's come at him, because he's decided the man is walking straight into death. His bold declaration doesn't spark anger. It unleashes a deep, booming laugh that ricochets through the ruins. Adelgratz throws his head back, practically shaking with amusement at the boy's nerve. He scoffs at the whole idea, basically asking how this kid could ever be a saint, and Adel fires back, saying if the legendary Rolai South were still alive, he'd be over 60 years old by now, so the kid's claim has to be impossible. Skepticism gets a quiet, almost apologetic correction. Alta steps in and tells him Raoul, I South died 15 years ago, and the moment the words land, Adel is left totally blindsided. The revelation blanks Adel for a heartbeat, then he scoffs, shuts his mind to the truth, and tells himself the only thing that matters is the fight. He smirks, soaks in the moment, and lunges forward to attack. Alta slams into his final charge with a ferocious strike head-on, and when their blades collide, a blinding burst of force erupts like a shockwave. That shockwave slams Adelback backward, eyes bulging with pure disbelief. He sputters that Alta's parry was amazing, but his own blade should have hit a magic explosion dead-on. Alta just stays calm and replies, don't be impressed, I didn't just dodge it, I cut straight through the magic. He doesn't let his opponent breathe, blade raised high. he rockets forward and slashes with a massive, crushing arc. Adelgratz, the enforcer, snaps his tongue in annoyance and braces hard for the hit. That first swing lands like a spark. He snaps his blade into a perfect reed, whipping it through the air in a dizzying blur of light and steel. Adel snaps into motion, blasting out a torrent of raw power as a violent, crackling aura erupts from his body like a storm. The boy stops dead in his tracks, eyes widening as he finally clocks the new defense, an exploding armor shield. As long as the enforcer keeps it active, nothing can even get close without getting blasted out of existence. Still refusing to back down, he lunged and drove his sword forward. Then his blade's tip slammed into the crackling energy field with a violent, metallic snap. He grits his teeth and drives harder, but that defensive aura won't budge. His blade gets slammed back with a thunderous boom. The pressure crushes down like a giant hand. Adol grunts as the sword's point bites into his aura and detonates in a blinding burst. The explosion erupts and hurls a wall of dust and debris into the air. Then, as the smoke starts to drift down, the young swordsman is already standing his ground, blade aimed right at the blast's heart. When the dust finally drifted down, he spotted Adelgratz still standing, jaw clenched, chest heaving, shaking him with sheer respect. The older warrior boomed, saying it was incredible, and then admitted that even with all his power, he couldn't manage to land a single hit. He kept praising him, and his voice rang with pure admiration, insisting Alta Schweitzer's gifts were so unreal they practically made him believe reincarnation was real. Alta noticed the warrior looked real happy, and Adel didn't even pause. He blurted that he'd wanted to battle the world's strongest man for ages, the sword saint Raoul. With a sharp, confident grin, he admitted that Alta really was the sword saint. Then, with a reckless swagger, he claimed he was stronger. Just as he started bragging about his magic, his words choked in his throat. Confusion slammed into his face when he felt his energy vanish out of nowhere. The second it happened, the mystery snapped into focus. Alta's sword burst with blinding light, and it started sucking the magic straight out of the air around it. Staring down his rivals, Alta's windling aura curled around him as he spoke in a calm, cutting voice, answering the warrior's unspoken question. Did Adol just realize his blade was sucking in magical power? Then he finally let the truth of his blade slip out, etched in kohlite, a rare material that drinks in every ounce of magic right around it. He planted his feet inside the glowing circle, his sword carved into the air, cool as ice, and told his opponent straight up he had zero magical power left. Delgratz couldn't stop staring at the ring, and Alta finally snapped into explanation, because back in his old life, that ring was no magic trinket at all. It was a dueling battlefield where people settled their fights with raw skill and brute strength. He explained that the circle marked the exact zone where his sword's magic would drain. Every fight he'd ever had ended with this blade, and while Adol might have heard of the legendary silver sword, he clearly had no idea about the real hidden power underneath. Delgratz laughed it off as pure foolishness. Sure, maybe Raoul Isoth could have pulled off a stunt like that, but Alta was just a kid now. He mocked him straight to his face, daring him to explain how he was supposed to beat him in a brute force fight, magic or not. He paused just long enough to hear the boy's logic, then nodded, because if there was even a sliver of a chance Alta could win, this had to be decided right then and there inside the dueling ring. The Kinkakushu enforcer rips into the air with a thunderous roar, his body snapping with raw power as he digs in for the next clash. With that crushing force bearing down, Alta plants his feet and thrusts his sword forward, eyes locked in grim focus as he realizes he hasn't even finished absorbing all of his opponent's heat yet. Steel collides in a blinding flash, a brutal crash of sound detonates, and the impact ripples through the air like thunder. Two fighters grind together in a no-holds-barred clash, steel screaming against steel as a burst of magic explodes from the exact point where they collide. The enforcer shrieks with every ounce of strength, and Alta watches the last of his power drain straight into her blade because she just pulled off the impossible. The strain from the absorption and the brutal, drawn-out clash is wearing him down, but his eyes don't budge. They stay locked on his target with his. The opponent, now battered and weak, spots his opening. He twists away from the enforcer's desperate counter swing and surges forward, driving his sword straight through the man's chest. The big man's eyes blow wide with pure disbelief, sweat flooding his face as he gasps for breath, stunned, shaking, and still trying to figure out how any of that even happened. Kinkakushu staggered from the last hit, eyes wide in shock at how hard his opponent struck, because how could a skinny kid keep up with strength like that, unless he was still pumping himself up with magic? He replays the brutal years of searching for someone stronger than him, born the moment he'd already lost all hope for his country, and now, with everything in view, he finally realizes how wrong that despair really was. The gravity of what he's facing hits him like a punch, one slip, and he'll get sliced to ribbons, but instead of fear, a wild grin lights up his face. He can't believe his luck. He's locked in with a real sword saint. And with fresh fire in his heart, he vows he's going to kill the boy. That wild, electric realization hits him, and he erupts with a savage roar, demanding they keep clawing forward until one of them finally reaches the very top. Their weapons slam together with a thunderous crash, and the shockwaves blast through the air as sparks rip from the grinding steel. The blast hammers the enforcer backward, and he staggers, coughing up a spray of blood. He gasps through the pain, grinning at the boy as he admits he's having the time of his life fighting a real sword saint. His face contorts into a blood-soaked mask of resolve, and he roars that it doesn't matter if he dies. He'll crush his opponent no matter what it costs. Blood trickles from the corner of his mouth, and he just watches the enforcer go wild, cool as ice, because he knows this isn't strength at all. It's a doomed obsession with power that always ends the same way. He thrusts his sword out, and the blade flares with blazing white light. Then he tells his opponent this is the least he can do, begging them to take it as a gift of his gratitude. King Kakashu's enforcer locks eyes with him, his expression frozen in pure disbelief and confusion, sweat dripping from his brow as his brain scrambles to understand what he's seeing. He blurts out that it has to be magic. He breaks down what his blade really does. The silver spirit sword hoards magical power equal to every person he's defeated. Then it hits him. In his old life, he never touched that power because he swore he'd win using swordplay alone. But now he's not the same, and it's only getting worse. With his resolve steel sharp, he announces he's finally cashing in some of that stored power right now because a girl is waiting for him upstairs. With a single flick of his blade, a monstrous wave of pure white energy explodes forward, swallowing the enforcer whole. He just stands there, frozen, wordless, stunned. A blazing beam rips across the land, like a disaster made of pure light, and it wipes out everything it touches. When the light finally fades, all that's left is a giant, smoking chasm, and from far away, Iris Rienfels just stares in shock, stunned by how massive the damage is. She snaps her head toward Arya and Natria, both kneeling right beside her, and Iris blurts out, asking if that wild power was really their teacher's. Then Arya stares back, just as stunned, admitting she has no clue, but insisting the fight has to be over. She drops to the ground and bandages her wounds while Arya and Notria hover close by. Arya tells Iris to stay back, but Notria snaps that Iris won't listen to anyone. Iris blames herself for the reckless stunt, and Arya forgives her on the spot, just with one silly rule. Iris has to buy her dessert. Her face tightens with iron resolve. She's made her choice, and she's ready to wait and trust it with everything she's got. She clamps her sword in a death grip, and wild power crackles around her hand, because if Adelgratz shows up, she's taking him on herself. Watching her friends stand their ground without wavering, Arya's resolve hardens on the spot. Together, they're finishing this. A sharp clatter erupts from a nearby structure, and both of them snap their heads toward the noise, startled to the bone. Alteschwaitz bursts out through a hole in the ground, staring at the chaos. His underground ladder has dropped him right here. His sudden appearance makes Iris jerk backward, half panicked and half relieved, and Arya blurts out his name in total surprise. He tells the worn-out students to just stay put, and Arya, hope and worry tangled across her face, blurts out right away, "So, were you victorious?" He grins through a brutal cut on his cheek, and zero hesitation declares his victory. Of course, he says. His vow lands harder when you see the crumbling, cratered earth at their feet, silent proof he won't break his promise. His effortless "yeah, I won" hits Iris like a punch. She's instantly flustered, convinced only her teacher could call it that casually. She grits her composure, then blurts, "Sensei, I need to tell you something." Then she blurts out her deep gratitude, cheeks burning as the words spill out. She's sure her father would feel the exact same thanks for everything he's done. He waves off her thanks, saying it's not needed at all, and then he tells Iris Sands that her father has to be proud of how much she's grown too. Arya doesn't miss a beat. When he showers Iris with praise, Iris freezes in shock, cheeks burning red and totally speechless, and Arya clocking every single second. As Arya keeps her eyes on her friend, she pops out with a tiny thumbs up, then admits the truth. Back when they first met, she wasn't just impressed, she fully wanted to brawl him, thinking her magic meant she'd never, ever lose to her teacher. Her words trail off, and suddenly a memory crashes in of Iris and Alta sparring, because Iris keeps talking, admitting the truth was obvious the very first time they clashed blades. Her face, smeared with battle grime, softens, and a faint blush creeps in. In her head, she tells herself her teacher will always be, and the rest of the thought just fades into quiet, odd silence. Alta snaps her out of her daydream, telling her and Arya that he's calling in the nights so they can get proper medical care, then admits he's got some investigating to handle and needs to step out for a bit. Both girls nod and accept his orders. He whips around and strides alone into the misty woods, already locked onto his next move, because he knows this mess isn't done yet. There's still one enemy left to end. As he vanishes into the trees, one last thought hits him. Handling that final threat isn't his job anymore. In a lavish chamber, Prince Zeal's hands tremble in his ornate chair after the latest report. Sword gang wiped out to the last man, and Iris Renful is still totally unscathed. Fury detonates in his chest as he slams a glass down, sending the drink splashing everywhere. Then he snarls at his subordinate, a silent figure lurking in a dark hood and mask, demanding to know how killing a mere 15-year-old girl could possibly be this hard. He keeps blasting them with that accusatory finger, reminding the masked figure of the huge pile of money he's shelling out, and then snaps. How is some 12-year-old brat even throwing a wrench in their entire operation? Prince blurts out his hatred for those incompetent fools, and the masked figure just stays calm, asking whether he's really wondering if they'd be willing to deal with it themselves. Zeal is frozen in shock by that sudden question. He can only stare as the mask splits, then drops away in pieces, and when it's gone, he finds a sharp-eyed young woman staring back, coolly demanding, "Say it again, what did you just say?" That confident smirk blooms on her face as she tilts forward just a bit, basically telling the prince, "You better know who you're really messing with." Then he lifts a tiny, round device and calls him straight out, Zeal Tiliksama. Lemher Owen steps in and says they've got his complete confession. He hired the sword gang to execute the assassination. She watches Prince Zeal's face twist in raw disbelief, his eyes bulging as he yells her name like it can't be real. She calmly holds up a one-of-a-kind mask, tells us it was recovered by her talented 12-year-old subordinate from a sword gang member named Fismidin, and it's that very mask that's brought her to this room. With the prince's recorded confession and this airtight piece of evidence, she declares it's more than enough to lock every single suspicion onto him. The prince's shock curdles into a cruel sneer. He scoffs that a mere knight commander of all people could scare him, the king's son. He laughs off the woman as nothing but a battered enemy, then yanks out his sword and orders her to hand over the evidence, swearing he'll cook up a reason for why she deserves to die. He charges ahead, roaring that nothing will stop him. Then Alta's lightning-fast intervention slams a wall in his path. With a sharp clang, Alta effortlessly snaps the prince's blade aside, flinging it skyward, and Zeal freezes, stunned for a split second. He barrels forward and clamps his blades to the prince's, grinding steel as he tries to press every inch of his advantage, while Alta stays icy calm, warning him he's betting way too much on both his pull-over people and his sword skills. Later, inside the grim Black Knight's headquarters, Alta sinks into his chair and plunges into paperwork, an oddly refreshing breather from all the chaos. He stands in a fancy office, now fully dressed in a formal Dark Knight's uniform, and mutters to himself that it's been way too long since he last wore it, while across the room, Lemher Owen beams, praises him for yet another flawless job, and with Prince Zeal finally locked up tight, she wonders if the men who vanished on the mission can finally be paid what they're owed. He clocks it immediately. Her workload keeps ballooning, one step after another. Lemher jumps in and confirms it, because their inbox is getting slammed with questions about the recent incident, and they still have to figure out who let the assassin into the palace. Bottom line. They've got a mountain of problems staring them in the face. He grins bright and says he's already tallied his earnings, then admits he can't wait for that special bonus, while Lemher smirks that he's still just as greedy as ever, and he only laughs back like, the real hard part. That's only just beginning. As they stride through the corridor, Lemher fires off a question. Does he regret any of his time as an instructor now that the case is over? He spins around, wondering if they're headed to hash out a brand new mission, but she shuts that down fast. This walk isn't for that. He answers that earlier question and admits teaching is actually kind of fun, but he's still clear. His real job comes first, because he's a knight, plain and simple. He insists he can keep his promise to Iris without ever becoming an official instructor. Then, with a determined stare, he reveals the whole dream. He wants to earn enough money to slip into a quiet, secluded life as a hermit out in the countryside. His bold declaration leaves Lemher completely flustered. She blurts that being a hermit is yet another nightmare for a 12-year-old. Then she forces herself to breathe, says they'll talk it over later at the bar, and brings up the new mission too. Outside the city's clock tower, the bell's chime bursts out loud, echoing down the streets like it owns the night. At Fiorum Academy, the courtyard buzzes with students under warm sunlight, and right in the middle, Arya Natria is beaming, laughing loud, waving at someone you can't see, while she strolls with her classmates, and that familiar, everything's normal again feeling finally settles back over the campus. Before she can blink, her focus snaps to Iris Renful, standing all alone by a stone railing, staring out in quiet silence, while Arya slides in with another friend, calling her name and immediately asking how badly she's hurt. She whips around and gives them a soft, reassuring smile, her cheek bandaged and her arm tightly wrapped. Then Iris insists she's fine, and she thanks them for worrying about her. Right as her friends start to leave, a voice she knows all too well pops up behind her. Alta steps in, and with a sharp note, tells her she's still got that bandage from her latest ordeal. Then he drops a crisp, formal bow and blurts that he's honored to be asked as her personal escort, yet you can practically see his doubts creeping in the moment the words leave his mouth. His words make her cheeks burn, and suddenly she remembers his earlier promise, how she could always count on him, and that formal declaration hits her so hard she can't even breathe. Now it's just them on the balcony. She listens hard as he lays it all out. The commander warned him that the serious Black Order is drowning in understaffing, so his new job is simple but relentless: stay at the academy with her, with only the occasional night mission. Iris drops her gaze, her face full of worry as she asks if she's just a burden to him, and Alta shoots back instantly, promising she can always count on him. Then the tension melts off her shoulders as she accepts his reassurance in a quiet exhale. She blushed hard, stunned as Alta cheerfully reminded her she was a student too, and basically still a kid herself. And when that hit, he couldn't stop himself from giggling at her reaction. Then he listened as she blurted out she wanted to be a swordsman just like him, and even though he couldn't quite wrap his head around it, he lit up at the idea that she had a real dream. With fresh fire in her eyes, Iris swore she'd obey her father's wishes, become a knight, and one day outshine him. He stayed calm, but inside he was praying she'd make it. Then she called him by his rank, First Officer Alta Schweitz, and straight up asked him to be her bodyguard. When he felt her grip lock in his, he didn't hesitate, he eagerly accepted. Right in the middle of it, stunned Aurea Natria blurted out what she'd just seen, like she'd witnessed the whole thing firsthand. Iris spun around, totally flustered, and shouted Aurea's name. She shot Alta a sharp look right away, grilling him if he was about to pull that fake instructor act again. Then he stayed cool and said they could spar after class, and that offer immediately ticked Iris off. She blushed and insisted that if he was really going to square up, it should be her, no question. Deep down, she knew her life at the academy was about to get messy again, and then Aurea shot back, quick as a whip, that she'd asked him first. He smiled to himself, stunned that his old life could have never even dreamed of something like this. And that's how he finally earned the title, bodyguard to Iris, the Sword Saint Princess. He had no clue how long he'd get to stay beside her, but he made his choice. He'd guard her for as long as fate would let him. He watched them with a calm, quiet smile, Iris standing tall and blazing with determination, while Aurea clung to her arm, eyes locked on the same hopeful future, because his mission was crystal clear now. He would protect her, back her every step, until the day she grew into the strongest knight and saved this country herself.